What's up, guys? Analysis stream. What's up, Astrobot? Astrobot, analysis stream. We've only got one game. I don't know what's going on with me this week. We're a little behind schedule. Where are the game submissions for the week? Anyways, I've only got one game from Astrobot. Welcome. We can analyze one of my games. Games submitted by viewers. No Pawn to Kraken battle for Saturday. I got to prepare for my tournament game on Sunday. So Friday, tomorrow is Blitz Rapid stream. Is why the Wednesday stream is crucial. You know, that's interesting. That's why the Wednesday stream is crucial. I was thinking about this, you know. I don't think the Wednesday stream is really crucial. It was my least followed stream. But the timing of it, will everyone remember to submit a game for the Thursday stream? Maybe. I mean, most people who submit games, honestly, Astrobate, they weren't necessarily here Wednesday morning, so I'm not sure. It may just be like, you know, a conclusion that's easy to jump to. But I think we'll still get some more games. Let's start with your game. And then we'll get some games as we go, you know. Mr. Coffee, welcome. Thanks for being a moderator. I'm going to do normal Friday stream tomorrow. No Saturday stream. I want to prepare for Sunday's tournament game. And then Sunday we're going to have the normal simul stream. So there's no team battle this Saturday. I'm not going to stream on Saturday. Astrobate, I don't know about Wednesday streams. Alright, so this is Astrobate's game. He's playing black. This was submitted just now. You have e4, c5. Sicilian defense. Oh wow, this guy is sacrificing a piece. Knight f3, g6, and bishop c4 the Bodler. You see that game, the number one game in the list there? We were just talking about this game earlier tonight. You have no games except from Sladgie tournaments. Well, that counts. You're welcome to submit one of those if you find it interesting. But, you know, Astrobate and I just looked at a game where he played bishop g7 and white castled. I was explaining to him that the critical move for white here, the best move for white here is c3, because that's the only move after which white can aspire to play d4 in the early beginning of the game, and that's the early beginning. In the opening of the game, which turns it effectively into a sort of open Sicilian. I was explaining that I think, you know, black here has to choose between two quite different but interesting lines. The d6 and the e6. And Magnus actually played this against Van Foreest. Heard some funny stories about Van Foreest. I don't know what's true. Bishop takes f7 check. So this move is a bug house move, essentially. A strong move in bug house, and maybe in crazy house, but chess, I don't think so. White's now sacrificing a bishop for exactly one pawn, and a check. Disrupting black's castling prospects is not really that significant here. Just the f7 square is slightly weakened. Notice that all the other squares here are covered. I mean, Black really doesn't have any weaknesses in their position at all, other than the f7 square. So this unsound sacrifice should be refuted quite easily. I would assume that white, would probably play knight to g5 check, and in that case, I would recommend not playing king f6. So we want to go back. Sometimes you have g8 available, and sometimes you have e8 available. I think it makes the most sense to get off the f-file, because if you go on the f-file, queen f3 check, interpose, and white wins a piece back with d5. So it's a question of knight g5 check, king e8. Really the only good move. So this leaves you with a chance to go wrong. I mean, this is the only move in this position that maintains a piece up. You shred me and then lose on purpose. Asturbate's simul specialty is like losing on purpose. That's the way it feels, Goju. Thanks for joining us, guys. Mr. Coffee, Goju, Asturbate. Thanks to all of you for being subscribers. Don't forget to donate, support the stream. Our Christmas fund is up to $410, though it's really $290. Okay, so king e8 would be the best move there if you play knight g5 check. White does not do that. Guys, please submit games. We've got 2.5 to 3 hour streams, so plenty of time to analyze games here submitted by the scribers. The scribers did not send me any games this week. I don't know what's going on. As Ezrabe pointed out, it's partially my fault. It's also partially, my fault again, because I stopped doing Wednesday streams. I don't think it's that critical, honestly. Basically, I didn't get a lot of viewers on Wednesday mornings anyway. I don't think that's the killer. It doesn't hurt, though. I mean, some people let me check if Schumacher sent me something. Sometimes Schumacher will send me games and I don't realize. He would probably be a guy who would forget to submit a game because I'm not doing Wednesday streams anymore. I got nothing from him. Alright, so we've got plenty of room for more games. Asturbate gifting, yes, 5 gift subs. Hey, it's Lou. Oh my gosh. Hey, it's Lou. That's a suspicious name, I just realized. Most Truash, the Charles King Cav Italian Machine, National Master from Canada, and I Take Back, who I haven't seen in a while. Thank you guys. Hey Lou, what's new? Hey, it's Lou. Remember Hey, it's Miro? Could it be a new Hey, it's Miro? We got 5 gift subs from Masturbate. I'd rather give you cash. But this brings more people to the stream, which can be better than cash, in a way. We don't have enough subscribers. We've been dropping. It's the Carpet Mart guy? Carpet Mart? The My Pillow guy. Alright, anyway. So white plays c3. Clearly his idea is queen b3, but this is too slow. I mean, you got to play knight g5 and see what you got here. Or else castles. But, I mean, c3, honestly, it's too slow. Black can luxuriantly take his time. I mean, literally, every move on the board is okay for black here. I would say knight f6, queen b3 check, d5, is perfectly fine for black. Notice the lack of control of white, really not having that much control over the dark squares. Excuse me, the other squares, the light squares. Your other dark squares. Don't you remember those commercials from the 80s? I remember the Carpet Mart. I was thinking today I was a child of the 80s, too. So Asturbate, knight c6. Little lag in kingside development. I think this is actually a mistake. Very slight mistake, but I think you should be probably kingside development oriented here with your king popped out on f7. On knight c6, now on queen b3 check, you can play e6. It's still fine. I think he should probably play d4. What he does, though, try to overrun you. Do you use any of my games for analysis? Just tell me the game, man. But wait till we're done Astrabate's game. So, d3 is too slow as well, but okay. White's down a piece. h6 now. Good prophylactic move, Astrabate. That's a really nice... Bijak. We know that. Dude, I'm just analyzing Astrabate's game now. Okay. h6. Prophylactic move, controlling g5. That's a nice move. Yeah, h6 is a great move. Actually, this type of structure in the Sicilian, keeping pieces off that square. In the English, in the Sicilian, h6, h3 is very useful. Closed English. Closed Sicilian. White is just down a piece, unfortunately, for him. You love the 90s vibe of the stream. Phew, would you? You're born in 79. I thought you were younger. Wow. You're old. No, man, I can't. It's like hot or cold. I'm either too hot or too cold. I can't. I feel like the Three Little Bears or whatever. Goldilocks and the Three Bears. It's too hot. My porridge is too hot. No, I'm too cold. The air's too cold. No, it's too hot. That's cool. You're from 79. Damn, dude. That's old compared to my average viewer, right? Actually, here in the crew, we've got Astrabate, Mr. Coffee, and me. We're really seniors, or at least if you average our ages. And then you, generation later, and then Bijak, who's a mere infant. All right. So, Astrabate, you're allowing knight g5 check now. I think this is like an inaccuracy. White now gets, he gets another. I wonder why. What makes you say 90s vibe? I've got a new. Speaking of the 90s vibe of the stream, I've got a new layout coming. I think we're finally going to implement it soon. So if you like, retro vibes, maybe I got something for you. Not ready, but almost ready to implement new layout. Knight g5 check, takes, queen takes g4. Now we've got a pawn, and your pawn structure is damaged. White's still utterly lost, but he's a little closer to not so utterly lost as he was before. So I think that White has to go for knight g5 there. This is too conservative, and good job by Astrabate. There's just no call to keep the game complicated with something like pulling the bishop back. Good job trading. And now here you do have knight f6. And I think you should pull the trigger on this. Contrary to popular belief, I would rather play knight f6 because there's nothing concrete against it. It's well protected. You connect all your pieces on the back rank. I would say, Astrabate, this is a minor inaccuracy. It's still good. You're winning by a wide margin here. But I feel like you're taking a step backwards, like literally with king e8. Why not play knight f6? You can like artificially castle after that at some point. I think this is an inaccuracy. King e8, and now knight to g4. White clearly has no clue what he's doing. And I think you should pay attention, probably to this here. But it's hard to say what exactly black should do. I mean, maybe king d7 actually, walking over here. Probably your best move again is knight f6. Trading pieces when you're up a piece. So this is kind of okay, but not to the point, And then he goes back. Now knight f6. Please play knight f6. If I had $100 for every time that Astrobate wrongly played knight e5, I wouldn't have to stream for a year or two. I'll tell you that. Astrobate, you have a tendency to do this a lot. A lot of premature knight c6, premature knight c6, knight e5. You are not developing the other pieces here. Better to play this move. I see this maybe knight c4. And you're attacking his queen, but you're putting your knight in a square, where it can be driven away, ultimately. Okay, he should play queen e2. I think you're winning. You're winning. Knight e5 is good enough. All right, here. You have more incisive moves. But I like this controlling the d5 square, castles, and now, the problem is, boom, f4 is going to get hit. So, at what point is Astrobate going to get into serious trouble here? I'm seeing this. f4 driving the knight away. Knight f7. So g5 check. Knight f7. Queen here. I'm not sure about this. I'm not sure I like this. So maybe castling queenside, that's illegal. So probably you should just get on with it. Play knight e7. And on f4, you're dropping back. This knight is protecting this. Queen g4. And suddenly, I wish I hadn't put my queen on b6. Seriously, dude, what if you put your queen on d7 instead? This is where your queen should have been. Knight g4, queen d7. Paying attention to where the weak squares are. I know there's no direct connection between d7 and g6, but I'm just pointing to the white square complex here. Your only weakness. Queen b6 is a mistake. Here. f4 and then knight c6. Again, I like this better because you're kind of covering the weaknesses there. This guy almost has something. He almost has something. I mean, e5 is getting close. f5 is getting close. Now he plays queen e1. And then b5. And then now he plays a really bad move. This is like white's worst move of the game other than bishop takes f7 check. But seriously, you've got to bring the knight back to the center. He plays knight a3. Because it attacks something. But it's misplaced forever now. Maybe queen f7. Maybe you're not safe no matter what here. Now you're on the line of the f file. And then white probably plays this maybe too early. So take and g5, perfect. Keep it closed. And then white goes berserk. Lavanya Balu. Lavanya. Balu could be Hungarian for Balázs. H takes G. Queen takes g5. Now he's 2 pieces down without compensation. d4, cd4, cd4, knight g4. I'm feeling an Acer mate coming on. And white's queen is tediously placed. Hello! h3. And now d5. Very nice. Check. Do we have a better move? A nail biter. Do we have a better move here? I'm going to go out on a limb, as they say. And if you're calm and collected, you have this, which is really, really nasty. Because you're threatening mate on h2, covering the escape square, plus bishop d4 check, which is virtually mate. White's only move is queen h5, and then bishop takes d4 check, king h1, and knight g3 check. So you let him out. You played this too quickly, queen h2 check. I think you're winning, but it wasn't the most accurate. There's a chance he could escape here. I mean, white should play, he should at least try, I guess, king e1. I think he's lost anyway. King e1. Queen g3 check. There's just too many ways to attack him with the queen and the knight and the rook coming to c8. But it was a slightly inaccurate move order by black. He could have gotten away. Check. And now I definitely want to keep checking him, here. So I think you should play queen takes g2. And it's mate, isn't it? Actually, I didn't realize this. It is mate. So this is a really bad move by Asterbate. Not enough to really badly lose the game or mess up the winning position, but this is serious inaccuracy. I mean, you have queen takes g2 check. This is mate in a couple moves. Here, check, here. Rook h3 check. And that's mate, or, obviously he's getting mated in other variations immediately. So really sloppy. Bishop takes d4, a non-check, okay, luckily or not luckily, white doesn't have any checks here. You end up having to play queen takes g2 check anyway. And then he walks into mate. Boom. Alright, man. I've got another game here from Sung Prism. He got it in time. Oh, Sung Prism versus Oms. Okay, this is from our tournament. Analysis board. Study. I've got to choose a game I've got from Schumacher. I'll put that in first. I know he's gonna freak out. Don't freak out. That's not it. That was Stojanovic. Well, here it is. A whole bunch of games. You can choose any game you want. Oh, no, not me. Every game's against me? Oh my god. It's all of the games against me. Alright, let's see this one. That should be up next. Schumacher should be up next. Then Sing Prism. Aspie, thanks for the gift subs. Guys, next stream is going to be Friday, tomorrow morning. Then, I've got a tournament game Sunday morning. I'm not going to do a Saturday. We're not going to do a Saturday stream this week. Maybe for a week or two. So there's no Kraken team battle this week. And I do have the simul stream on Sunday after my tournament game Sunday morning. I will be right back. I'm going to take a 1-minute break. Be right with you guys. Would you? Let me know if you have an interesting game. Okay, we're back. I've got 3 games now. If you insist. I don't insist. This is Schumacher's game against me from earlier this month. Wow. Really, I didn't realize you did this. Oh, this is from the tournament. Okay. Wait, I don't understand this. I don't understand how this was played. How are we... Wait. Oh, okay. Yeah. Sorry, this was from the Kraken Arena. This is from my Kraken Arena thematic tournament like a month ago. That's why the knight's going to f3. Okay, so Schumacher was forced to play from the starting position e4, a6, d4, d6. Accelerated Kraken. Also a version of the St. George defense, if you prefer. Usually the St. George defense is like a6 and b5, or a6 and e6. So I'm calling this the accelerated Kraken because of the d6. I think this is quite interesting opening, and it really it's good enough that I think it's like better than Czech defense, or so-called Pribble, at least as good as or better, and it has a lot of flexible possibilities. Deserves its own name, and that's why we've dubbed it the Kraken. The a6 d6 combo is an accelerated version. I'm usually doing e4, d6, d4, knight f6, knight c3, a6 is the official Kraken official. Xerox Brooklyn game. If Yeah, Xerox came the other day and like just didn't play against me. I'm just not gonna credit like anyone who makes like what's the adjective I need? We're not going to give credit to or attention to I can't think of the adjective. I want to reward creative thinking here and not credit the stale, biased type of comments. Okay. If you want to get better, if you want to learn, you have to be willing to open your mind and consider things differently. If you just keep doing the same thing over and over again, you're never going to improve. You know, you're just going to maybe maintain the same level, or even maybe slightly improve at a very tiny bit. But basically, you have to stop being dogmatic. You know, just stop being dogmatic. So the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. Exactly. So knight f3. You know, the nice thing about knight f3, you're developing a piece, and you're not putting your knight on c3 like in the path of the incoming b pawn. So knight f3 seems like a tad safer in a sense than knight f3. Black now plays e6. And I mean, I know that e6 isn't obvious move here. You know, it looks passive. It blocks the bishop at c8. I don't think it's black's best move. I just threw something out there, and I have been experimenting with this like small center defense. I'll occasionally play like e6 d6. But objectively, like, black should play probably knight f6. I don't think there's anything wrong with obviously g6 transposing to the modern defense. And I want to say like bishop g4, that's a move. I don't think it has any special value. Alternatively, maybe knight d7 or something. There's the guys, you know, Martin Merva and Fries Nielsen. There's a number of Fries Nielsens, though. They get confusing. So I'm not taking challenges today. Well, Arsenal fan, knight f6, you know, I played a6, so we're not looking at like a standard Pearts here. Even if we was, it's not so easy for black to play c5 because there's taking on c5, you know, so you actually can't do c5. Knight f6 is black's best move. Okay. White should play knight to c3 probably. And then Drozic's game is the only game with b5. b5 isn't forced either. You know, I could talk about this in length, or at length. I am going to start at some point to do my Patreon channel. And maybe on the Patreon channel, I'll incorporate like a serious treatment of the Kraken. That's not the point of today's stream, though, to go over this opening. I'm just going to go over this game. So I think knight f6 is best. g6 is good, too. I played e6. It's slightly inferior. But then he surprised me. That's sort of like c5. Exactly. Well, I mean, there's never anything really okay with black's position in those c5 type of things. You know what I mean? If you do knight f6, knight c3, c5 takes, you're never completely okay here. for black. I looked at this with with Yabatis, I think. Yeah, this actually happened in a number of games there, but notably the first one in Bulgaria. Radulov versus Inkiev. Black actually tried to sack a pawn in a couple of these games. I think Yabatis had brought this up, and he threatened to maybe stop by tonight's stream. He was trying to justify this for black. I think Yabatis I thought he said queen a5. Maybe it must have been a different position. He was looking at, I could swear he was looking at this, and there's this trap with queen d5. This like refutes it. Or does it? No, this doesn't refute it, right? Because you have queen d5. Yeah, this refutes it. Queen d5, knight d5, and then we're threatening this. But anyway, Arsenal fans' suggestion would be like to just recapture, go into the ending. And so this is what happened in Radulov-Inkiev. Now the point is, this is not, like all of these kind of endgame situations, they are all different. This is not the same as the Philidor. This is not the same as, an endgame where the pawn's still on c7. I think these King's Indian type of scenarios where the king is like on d8, the best case scenario is usually where you played like only c6 and you can put your king on c7, you have a pawn on e5 or something like that. Those type of Ukrainian, old Indian type of endgames, or Philidor isn't so bad. But here we have a lot of weaknesses, so even if black isn't theoretically like lost here, they have an unpleasant position, like at best. And I'm seeing the move e5, but I'm not even certain that's white's only option. e5 actually looks pretty good. You could play e6 and just like bust up. No, you can't actually. Well, in knight d7 you could play e6 and bust up the structure. So maybe black should play like knight to g4 or something else. Then you have this issue. So there's a lot of problems for black here. It's not a good ending. Drazic's move is actually a move I played quite a bit, and it's okay. There's also, I had a game against the guy who was cheating with a computer. He played a4 against me. This is a really nice unexplored possibility. I assumed white was just a noob who was like dropping his central pawn, but it's like a deep pawn sacrifice. a4, b4. I mean, it's not even really technically a pawn sacrifice. After knight d5, knight takes e4. White can get the pawn back with knight takes b4, but he chose not to do that, just going for development. The computer just like crushed me in a perfect game. I can share that on the... Yeah, similar to Sozin. Exactly. Actually playing the Kraken Arsenal has inspired me to like start playing the Najdorf, because I realized that if I can play the Kraken, the Najdorf is like a great Kraken. I was always afraid to play the Najdorf, but it's fundamentally the best Sicilian, probably. Anyways, so lots of possibilities here. But I like knight f6 best. I played e6 against Schumacher, and I could do a hippo, because Uberdriver, says a6 is always bad. Even though he's been playing the hippo over the board every game. Now, but I was surprised when somebody played c4 against me. But with Schumacher, I totally am not surprised. This is a d4 player. I totally understand when Schumacher plays c4. He's playing d4 with white. He's playing c4 with white. He's playing a traditional kind of queen pawn game. But I do get surprised by people who do like, e4, d4, c4 when they're e4 players. So now knight f6, knight c3, and at this point I realize like already I have a dubious position. In fact, like I don't even know if knight f6 is a good move. It might even be a mistake at this point. At this point I might really literally have to play either A, a kind of Benoni, or B, a hippo, because I just simply don't have any other options, objectively. But I'm not sure, again, even if the Benoni option may not even be on the table. I mean, if you play c5, what happens if white takes? Do I have this? Is Is this like really a viable option for black? It looks like a kind of bad... It looks like a dubious Marazzi. Slightly dubious Marazzi. But I suppose, it could be worse. Let's just say. This square looks weak. Alright, anyways. I played knight f6. He plays knight c3. Now I have kind of a bad King's Indian. Let's say. I did this. Trying to play e5. Dr. Tripchance. If I do play e5, I'm going to be not only a tempo down, having played e6, e5, but also having spent time on the move a6. I can reverse my knights. That's funny, driver. We can do this, and then do g6 and b6. So the long way home. We can get our knights on e7 and d7 in 4 moves instead of 2. That's very efficient. So here he played bishop d3. There's a game here, Becker-Jensen versus Fries-Nielsen, where white played bishop e2. It's actually not easy to say where the bishop's better. I think that both moves are playable. So for me, I'm surprised that Schumacher didn't play h3. He loves to play the Makaganov. Yeah, bishop g5 is a funny mistake, no doubt. This move sucks. But that's part of my Kraken idea. If you play bishop g5, I play bishop e7, and I'm more than happy to accommodate you. A bishop g5 it's not an effective pin. The best is when you play bishop e7 and people go bishop g5 anyway. I'm like, well, what's the point of playing bishop g5 if you're not pinning something? So okay, he plays this. I think this is a good move. Now I played e5. If white had a3 in, it would look like a 2 knights tango, where I played a6 unnecessarily. If white plays a3 to stop knight b4, I have g6, and now I'm a tempo down in the 2 knights tango, where I played a Bologan system, where I played a6 for no reason. The question is, can white try to play e5 somehow, or are you overextended if you do that? So I played e5. And now, it's pretty clear. I don't think that white has any option here. D5 is literally forced, and it's strong. No, you have to play d5. This is forced. It's a very good version of a King's Indian, because a6 is a waste of time, and black's a tempo down. It's not clear where my knight should go, but I thought... I thought this move has potential to go to g6. It also puts pressure on d5, so I could theoretically... Black can theoretically try to attack his pawn center with c6, which you wouldn't often do in the King's Indian. This is more active than knight b8. White plays h3. What do you think is the best approach after e5? Yes, I answered that. Okay, so knight e2, yeah. No, knight e2, if you do something like knight e2, yeah. I'm not saying white is necessarily worse or something. But yeah, pawn takes pawn, probably. Position, at least black has a reasonable game now, I think black has a decent position there. Not so bad. White might even be slightly better yet, but... d5 is best, knight e7, h3, and now if I play g6, I'm kind of literally playing a bad King's Indian. But I don't think that black has a good, quote unquote, good move in this position. I just have a dubious position. You even might consider h5 here. I had another game where I literally did this, which was even worse than this game. Here I went knight g6, and I think white has a great game. He plays like I've played in the past against the Simon Williams, Black Lion or whatever. I'll just do this, and then you literally control all of the squares, so there's no way for those knights to ever get outposted anywhere. I mean, I'm not saying he learned this from me, but so now if white plays, I oftentimes will do like h4 later. If I play h4, black should be prepared to possibly play h5 himself. White has a very big advantage here. Bishop e7, bishop e3. Now this lever is significant idea. Maybe not right away, but soon. Yeah, so here I decided to play h5. I preempted him. I mean, I know from my perspective, if I was white, I would be thinking about h4, h5. And honestly, like if I stick my knight on g4, he could just back this off to d2. Yeah, b4, exactly. b4, bishop a3. Well, there's no bishop a3 here, but anyway, b4 is the plan. So I don't know. I didn't want to castle and like just get destroyed, essentially. So that's why I played h5. I imagine some players might prefer to play something like h6 and try to play knight h7, but that would just be like inducing me to do h4 or him to do h4. So I just, bit the bullet here, played h5, and I expected white, a high percentage of the time to play h4. If I go here, I don't achieve anything. White just moves away, and he has the g5. He's going to move his knight, kick my ass out of g4 at some point and play f6, f3, and black has no counterplay. Black is just clearly worse. I have a bad break and I have less space on the queen side. No, f5 is always going to be busted. That's acerbate. The problem is, like, even if you get in f5, white wins the e4 square, and it's usually better for white. So it's not a good position for black. Here he played queen d2. I don't know about this square. I don't think this is right. Queen d2, because you need this retreat square, or possibly the knight there might be useful as well. I think the queen is actually better on a different square, probably e2. This is actually the piece configuration I've used a lot against the old Indian, or the Czech Benoni rather. I think the queen on e2, leaving this bishop with retreat possibility, and the knight with knight d2. So queen d2 is like something you do in the King's Indian, where maybe like bishop h6 is a thing. This is not a fianchetto. There's really no point in queen d2. And I think the most important thing here for white is that his bishop literally is like, his bishop doesn't have any squares other than g5. Now, I mean, I'm playing a fast game, and I really don't have any good suggestions for black in this position. You could try to play like c5 maybe, and then white has to decide whether or not to take en passant and try to do some kind of fancy stuff, or to just leave the space as it is, go for b4. At some point, rook b1, b4 is probably the correct way to play. But I tried something provocative. I played h4, and maybe this is a good move. I don't know, because he is threatened here, and I have ideas of maybe knight h5. I think that white should try to keep the tension if it's possible, but maybe it's not possible. I mean, obviously you could play this and guard h3, but now you have to worry about this type of stuff. I'm doing this normal old Indian crap. Also, they do this and then try to use the g5. This is the black lion or whatever type of stuff. I know knight d7 is an idea as well, but generally speaking, I'm going to get like spatially slammed on the queen side. So I have to be careful about when to do that. If I can get in a5 and you can't respond with a3, it might work. So this is provocative, h4. My opponent plays g4, and now, no, the dark squares go. Okay. So I get a solid blockade after knight h7. I'm playing for knight g5, but he's got 3 pieces on it, so I can't directly play knight h5 or knight g5. In order to play knight g5, I had to play the ugly, and I don't mind queenside castles for white. I had to play, it's the same-ish, like here, and now I have to play this to play in order to play knight g5. But still, white has a hard time breaking through now. I mean, he's better, he has more space, but at the same time, his only break is either c5 or f4, and they're not that easy to get in. So now he plays, I guess, kind of artificial move, rook g1. And after knight g5, it looks like black is okay. Like, I'm okay now. I'm not saying black is better, but I'm blockading the position, essentially. It's like checkers. So he takes now with the knight. I take back with the pawn. Okay, my bishop is bad, but I've got a total lock on f4. I have a pawn that can guard the f5 square as well. So the space is compensated by control of f4. Now I've castled, and then he plays rook c1, which is a good idea. This is his only realistic break now. Rook c1, knight f4, bishop f1, guarding the h3, pawn, bishop d7. Now he's got the c5 idea, but how to get it in? Not that easy. b4, slightly risky move with the king on b1. So he plays this move, and at this point, we're playing a blitz game. Looking at it in retrospect, I mean, I played a risky move now for black. Objectively, I don't know if I would do this, but he's threatening to play c5. Uh-oh, Arsenal, you did it again. We held a message for reason. Sexuality, sex, or gender. Allow will post to the chat. I don't understand what's getting flagged in those chess variations. These chess variation lines, like, the bot thinks that it's some kind of sexual reference. Alright, Asprey, no violence. Stop posting violence. So he's threatening c5, and I played c5 myself, and then he plays pawn takes pawn. Now this changes the structure. e4 is more vulnerable, but at the same time, most importantly, I'm backward along the d file. So that was a risky decision by me. I take back with the pawn, and he goes for this unbalancing or imbalancing break. By the way, I did this at the World Senior, and I almost got destroyed. When I tried to play c5 to imbalance the pawn structure, I lost the pawn and was very lucky not to lose the game. Same case here, though. I mean, I think that black kind of takes the initiative after d5. I don't know what happened. Seems like we degenerated into playing blitz, and at this point, black's got active counterplay. So he makes a mistake. I mean, maybe the entire concept is flawed. But let's see, what else can white do? Pile up? The nightmare scenario is like, what would happen if you allow black to play c5? That's what's going to happen to me in the World Senior. That's effectively why I did it against the Slovenian Grandmaster. Like, if I don't play c5, he will. If I don't play c5, he'll play c5, and then he'll stick his knight like on e6 and d4. So essentially black's threat is this, followed by this, and in your face. The question is like, okay, what if I go here? If you go here, I'm in there first. And then what if I do this? What if we both go there? Like, this is a nice bishop. And this is a nice bishop, right? Those are good bishops. Can we just agree to trade them off or something? Which is worse, But I think you see the situation a little more clearly when you do something like king a1, knight d4, knight takes e7, queen takes e7, bishop takes g5, let's say. Like, here's an example. Even this I'm not sure about, because black might have tactics. open file. No bad pieces. Look, Ma. You know, speaking of Mom, like, think about Uber driver and Mama. Maybe, like, sacking a pawn or two isn't such a bad thing for black here. Like, we get freedom. What price is freedom? You know, to have not a bad piece. Access to f3, a monster knight on d4, a good bishop on d7. Who cares if we lose a pawn or two, right? This is totally interesting. So that's the kind of dynamic. But anyway, the dynamic is like if black is allowed to play c5, so he does this, I do this. Now white needs to come up with something. I think that black might just be better now. White plays bishop takes f4, and this felt desperate, but maybe it is good. Yeah, I guess he has to do this. Bishop takes f4, and then he wins d5. It's a central pawn. Bishop takes f4, yeah, this is best. Pawn takes pawn. Okay, now I remember. So I have these pawns, and my bishop's threatening to come into the game, but he has a powerful extra pawn at d5. I think the computer said that I was doing well. If I recall going over this game, yeah, f3 is an idea, e4 is an idea, but I'm down a pawn. You know, he has a good knight. His bishop's going to come to life now. But this is a game of bad bishops. Both bad bishops are suddenly like in the game again. They're like, they got off the bench and they're in the game. Like a minute ago, like both of them were the worst pieces on the board. Now suddenly this bishop can come into the game. Oops, f3. Well, anyway, theoretically, he can come into the game. Maybe knight c3, bishop c4, bishop d3. It could be like, you know, night and day. Exactly. I mean, it's getting in the game. This is getting in the game. Total change of the dynamic. I played this too early. I think I remembered the computer not liking e4, if I remember correctly. But it's a blitz game now. And then he plays d6 with a protected passer at d6. I played bishop g5. And then knight c3. And I think I rushed it. f3. Bishop c4 check. Notice how strong the bad bishops are. The bad bishops are like the best pieces on the board now. King h8, queen d4, bishop c1, rook c1. Now the question is, how much compensation does white have for that exchange? And if so, is it more than enough? Is white actually better? I remember having a similar game against Schumacher a few months ago where he had like 2 knights or something. Look at engine. You're so corrupt. Look at the engine. You're corrupting us. But the engine is like Pandora's box, man. The engine it's a blessing and a curse. If you look at the engine, you know, you just get answers, but you don't understand what they mean, you know. If I look at the engine, I get the evaluation of the position 19 moves from now. But I mean, how does that help me necessarily? You know, if I can't calculate 19 moves deep, maybe looking at the engine is just irrelevant, you know. I'm a human being. It depends on the position. I mean, but I'm just trying to be a devil's advocate here. Ask Maurice Ashley to look at the engine. He's an engine grandmaster, more so than a lot of people. All right. No, I think white has compensation. He has a crushing protected pass pawn. My central pawns are weak. One of them's about to fall. Acerbate. It's like a landline. Can I get a lifeline to God? Turning on the engine is like, yeah, Bruce Almighty. It's interesting. Arsenal talked about bishop takes g4, but it's a long way to Tipperary, dude, and that pawn is 3 squares away from queening. I'm not sure there's a lot of variations where I'm going to be able to sack my bishop on g4. Queen e8, rook e1, rook f4, rook e4, rook e4, knight e4, queen g6, and now bishop d3. One thing that is interesting about this position is that the exchange of rooks probably benefits one side or the other. I had the redundant rook. You know what I mean? So I'm sitting there with two rooks. I'm up the exchange. You trade off your only rook. I think that helps me in general. Now I have undisputed power with that rook that's not redundant because of the other rook. You know, I have the only rook on the board, essentially. I think you'd rather not have traded rooks, at least in principle. Although, you know, even here, this protected pass pawn is probably enough. Everything else, you know, he's got a protected pass pawn, another extra pawn. It's a knight and two pawns for a rook. Complicated position, but white shouldn't be worse. Rook e8 in the game, a3. Okay, now we're just playing like blitz moves. a5, king c2. By the way, the king position is favorable to white, especially the more we trade pieces. Queen e6. I didn't have a clear plan at this point, and I remember like with horror looking at knight g5. White's very close to serious threats here. h7, f7. Black could play. I could play queen e1, but it's actually not threatening. Is it threatening anything? Is rook e2 a threat? You know, if I was to go here, I was terrified something bad was going to happen, and I saw this was protected, but maybe, just maybe, I have this type of idea with rook e2. Bishop c4. Well, it's very possible. Like check, king b3, and you just like walk away. That sort of thing. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It looks like black's probably got to be content with a draw, if I could even get a draw at this point. There's so many scary checks and whatnot. I think white has the initiative. Queen f6, I went for a trade. It was a mistake, I believe, but I was in time pressure. So we turn on the engine now. He's winning. He's winning. He's winning. He's totally winning. Wow. So it's like too coordinated. Materially, black is just hanging on, but f3 is falling, h4 is weak, my king is open, there's nothing concrete down here, and finally, white should be winning. Queen f6 was desperation, and even the ending is good for him. Takes, takes, takes. And now you got three pawns. By the way, he played well structurally. You know, I mean, white has kept it a very healthy pawn chain. Notice this pawn chain in particular. You're very close to Sladgie Carlson. Pawn. Starry-eyed. Subscribe. Thank you. New subscriber. 3 months with Prime. Almost new. Like new. You're like new. Starry-eyed, thanks for subscribing for 3 months with Prime. The Vortex. Yeah, it's a good game though. It's instructive. I was losing, and it's a blitz game. It's a bullet game now. 4 pawns. Excuse me. 4 pawns for the exchange. Maybe I have rook h8. I do. Okay, so it's 4 pawns. It's 3 pawns. It was 3 pawns. Why didn't I take that pawn? I didn't take the pawn on h3 because I think I was concerned about losing c6. So if I take the h3, it's not that this is necessarily a problem. That's an issue as well. There's also the possibility of something like just directly attacking c6. And honestly, if that falls, and white's able to maintain, let's say, b4, c5, d6, forget about it. You know, if I lose c6 and I can't get the c5 pawn, it's totally over. So I played rook h8, but honestly I realized I couldn't take the pawn, so I played king f7. Now he goes here anyway, and now it's just sheer desperation. I have this one trick to play rook c8 and like pin his bishop to the c5, so he makes I guess a mistake here. Is this a mistake even? Maybe it's actually good. Takes rook c8, d7, rook h8. Yeah, he got the pawn. He's winning now. The only problem is that the pawns are fixed on the white squares, so it's hard to get that queen, you know, get the pawns through. White has to be careful. I still got a few pawns left. I mean, the first thing you want to do here is make sure like there's no losing chances. I guess white should consider playing b4 at some point. Maybe b3. See, he drops the b2 pawn. This is very bad. You could play b3, but your bishop is extremely immobilized. But the only chance to lose is really my pawns. So this was a blunder that allowed check and rook takes b2. And I think even here he was winning. No, it's a draw now. See, now we're actually 3 pawns for the exchange, but because his pawns are fixed all in the wrong color, it's supposed to be a draw. But the game was just, you know, about bullet chess. And eventually I think he made some blunder. Dropped his bishop or sacrificed it and lost. So the end of the game was just, you know, typical bullet game type of ending. But anyway, like, well played game by Schumacher for a good portion of the battle there. It was complex, you know, and obviously the opening wasn't really correct for me. But we got to a position where I think I was doing pretty well at one point. If you look at the graph, well, there's no analysis of this game. Oh man, forget it. It's going to take an hour. All right, Goiju. Goiju, thanks for being a subscriber. Analysis board. Study. Put in study. Study here. Guys, I just want to remind everybody that I started doing a new event, which was sometimes on Saturdays I'm doing a team battle. We created a second team called the Kraken Training Squad. We've been training Kraken since 2023. But I can't do it every week. Obviously, you know, weekends are difficult, and sometimes we're going to do it, sometimes we won't. This particular weekend I have a Hungarian Team Championship on Sunday. There's a Kraken team, so join it. If you check my profile, you can see. Please join the Kraken team. It's an idea where I have like scrimmage battles between the two teams for now. We've started with that. So if you're a member of both teams, you can play for either team. Every few weeks we're going to have Kraken versus Ponda. Kraken is in the camera now because he defeated the Ponda twice. Ponda has been vanquished. This week I can't do it. I have a Hungarian Team Championship game on Sunday morning, and I want to prepare the night before. So we're not going to stream this Saturday. I'm going to stream tomorrow morning and then the Sunday simul stream after my team game on Sunday. It's always going to be hit or miss as to whether I can stream on Saturdays or not. I will let you know in advance. Okay, thanks for the gift subs today. Thanks to our new subscriber, WJ Loof. I don't remember. He said, hey, chess people. He resubscribed for 53 months. Thank you very much, WJ. WJ Loof for subscribing. I hope your health is improving. I know you've been through a lot there. All right. The Warrior just keeps challenging me. One more time, and I'm going to have to, block you. And you're going to have to, refollow me tomorrow. I don't know why I'm so thirsty lately. I mean, does that mean I'm diabetic? I don't know. I'm, constantly thirsty. Maybe I just don't drink enough water. That could be something with that. Hey, Alms versus Sung Prism. Okay, this is the next game. So this was submitted by Sung Prism. We always take the side of the game that, you know, is from the player who submitted the game. It's weird analyzing my own games from the other side. But if you guys want a training tip, if you want to try something really interesting, I know this is going to sound weird, but, you know, we can't all be like Uber driver and be like dogmatic. You know, sometimes being dogmatic gets boring. I have a suggestion to try something experimental. If you want to, try it by playing unrated games, casual games, anonymous games, if you like, whatever. I'm serious. This is not a joke, or I'm not trolling you. Try playing with the board backwards. It's a very interesting thing to do. If you play from your opponent's perspective and move the pieces, it's really interesting. I mean, you learn to see the game in a completely different way. I find that it's helping me to think about the game much more prophylactically. So if I'm, you know, Sung Prism, I'm playing Alms, I'll flip the board. Whatever, it's anonymous versus anonymous. I'm playing black from this. I'm black, but I'm playing from this perspective. No, I'm not ending the stream. I'm just suggesting this to you guys, like, as something serious that I never heard any other player until me, you know, suggest. It's extremely enlightening, and I think it's good for your game. Practice sometimes playing with the board backwards. It helps change your perspective. You know, you see a lot of people do it, like, during the tournament games. It's sometimes rude. They, like, walk up behind their opponent. I always noticed it when I was playing in, like, a big tournament where I was playing on a demo board or something. If you're sitting there and the demo board is facing the other way, or it's just like, you know, whatever, it's exactly like you're black, but black is up, and you're seeing your own demo board, you'd be like, oh wow, I can see the board from two perspectives now. From the side, I have to say, I've always been bad. That's something experimental. I don't know about playing with the board turned sideways. Yeah, if you want to troll lichess, make a post in the forum that you really want to watch the board from the side. I dare somebody to, like, make a forum post complaining that the board can only be, like, turned 180 degrees. I dare you guys to, like, sit there and, like, post something in the forum that you're, like, pissed that there's no option to turn the board 90 degrees. I would have played with the board from the side. They'll just lose their minds, you know. Like, you'll make like Thibault or some of the coders and developers, like, really pissed off. Make them think that you're serious, you know. Demand a new feature, a feature request for 90-degree turning the board. All right, let's do game 3. So this is Sung Prism. Mysterious Sung Prism playing black here. The anonymous and the mysterious. Move 1 is good. And I want to just thank Alms for not playing Bishop F4. Alms is not going to play the London system. He plays what he plays. He has a very predictable opening repertoire. Having said that, he may have switched up. Oh, okay. It's not a King's Indian. Okay, so if you go into King's Indian, yeah, he'll play a classical. You play D5, and you play G3. Alright, I didn't know that he was playing the Catalan with white. Maybe this is something new. Normally, people who play the Catalan will prefer to play C4 first. I was under the impression that, well, I mean, I'll tell you one thing that I would get a lot, not a lot, but a few times. Burmakin played this against me, and Kashishvili played it against me, and neither of them got anything. But neither of them played it, like, dynamically either. A lot of times I'll see G3 on move 2, Then I'll play d5. White will play like bishop g2, and then I'll play like c6, try to play essentially like a London system versus the kings in the Grunfeld, whatever. That's what I was taught to do by someone else, and it served me well. But neither Burmak nor Kashishvili, my only like strong opponents who ever played this way against me, played c4. So white has to turn it into a. I think that white has to try to turn it into a gambit effectively. And those guys, they see the people that played like g3 on move 2, they don't want to get into some sharp thing. You know, they're trying to like avoid any kind of complex theory. Anyways, this is a little different. It's knight f3, move 2. You're playing d5. Now white's playing g3. Okay, you're playing e6. Not a Kali system. Well, no. It's a Catalan. White's attempting to play maybe a Catalan. But theoretically, at this point you can play c5. This is the most dynamic move. I mean, you can call it a Kali system for black if you want to. Kule, whatever. But I mean, you know, the Kali system is something for white. It's kind of like playing the Queen's Gambit declined with the white pieces, essentially. I mean, this isn't a Kali system. I mean, this is simply like playing the black side of the Queen's Gambit type of setup. It's not. It's similar in the same basic structure as the Kali system, of course. Kole, I don't know how you pronounce it in Belgian. We got to find a Belgian to tell us the proper pronunciation of Kole. But anyways, black played e6, and I like c5 the most dynamic. But it's sharper, you know. Someone unsound did it against me. I had a really wild idea, guys. Tell me what you think of this. Bishop g2, pawn takes pawn, and now castles. And what was my idea? To play knight c6? The heck was my idea? Oh yeah, knight c6, and then to not take the pawn. I had a really radical idea here for white. This is my game with someone unsound from last week's Simul or whatever. It's a reverse Grunfeld, standard line. Okay. But I was thinking, like, doesn't white have any other options here? And literally, I checked with the engine, and the only other move, because e5 is a threat. Something like b3, you know, I don't know about b4. I mean, maybe that's plausible. Let's see. I wouldn't play this except maybe in like a blitz game or something with white. But I just was trying to come up with something interesting. So, yeah, the other option is this. c3. Let's check this with the computer. D takes c. Knight takes c. Threatening the pawn. And now, should black play e5 or e6? It's almost like a Smith-Morra, except white's like fianchettoed. What about another option? Is there any other option? Like maybe bishop g5? Bishop g5? Let's say, well, how am I going to do bishop g5? Bishop g5? Bishop g5. No. Maybe I was looking at this. Bishop g5, e5, c3. Yeah, I guess it was this. Bishop c5, e5, c3, d takes c. Yeah, it was this. Okay, now I remember. I was thinking, can white play a gambit here? How bad would it be? So yeah, this is the only other move I come up with. Black also has knight e4 now. That's bulletproof. This looks good for black. Okay, I omitted that. Anyways, whatever. I'm sorry, guys. I just got off. I got off the tangent here. Off on another tangent. E6, bishop e7, castle castle, c4. Okay, so c4 is the critical move. b3 or something is not as problematic. Now you have to play either pawn takes pawn. I mean, c5 would be a transition to a Tarrasch, although probably not the most accurate move order. You can play d takes c, mainline open Catalan, b6, d6 or c6. d6 and c6 c6 and knight on bd7 are the most common ways to play the closed Catalan. But you played b6. Okay, so this is slightly unusual, and I've faced it quite a few times, and I have nothing special against it. Speaking of Belgians, there was this Belgian guy in August, who played this really weird b6 against me. He must have done it super early. I think it was here. He did something against me like this, I think. Castles, bishop b7, c4. Speaking of the devil, the Belgian guy played a very early b6 against me. Maybe it was like move 2, in fact. Extremely early. Yeah. It must have been like this. How could he have done it? Knight f3, d5, g3. It was something really early, like g3, b6. Extremely early. This must have been it. And then I looked in the database, and there was these games. Yeah, Duda, Fedoseev. Here I am, naively, like, not knowing that knight f3, d5, g3, b6 is like an actual variation. So you go back to 1981. Jeez. Wow, so Belyavsky had played it numerous times. Wow, 1981. So it's like relearning the past. This isn't a new idea. Someone's just digging up Belyavsky's old idea from 1980. He scored 2.5 out of 4 against Romanishin twice, Miles, and Petrosian. That's pretty impressive. Anyway, all right, just if you like b6, there's an idea for you. Whatever. So we're going to get into a normal Catalan now, but b6 unusual. No way to refute it. The most common move here is pawn takes pawn. And then the question is, why do you have your rolling luggage on the sidewalk? Really annoying. Have you guys seen those luggage things? They're like these trolleys that you pull along that have like 3 wheels that go up and down like little bumps better. I think that's kind of cool. Okay, I'm weird, I know. Okay, b6. So c takes d. I think as soon as you see b6, c takes d becomes a viable option. Why is exchanging pawns not good in the Catalan? Right, this is bad. It's always bad if this pawn chain is intact. Right, c6 f5. c6 bishop f5. This exchange is never good for white. The moment that black plays b6, this becomes a reasonable move, because now, as Azerbaid's friend Arsenal points out, yes, you're freeing the bishop, but that's not really the issue. The issue is like long-term weaknesses. If I take this way now, they're never going to be completely safe, and basically this diagonal will always be a little menacing under any circumstances. I mean, basically, Arsenal fan, this is like black playing the white side of a... No, it's not a Tartakover. I mean, white's playing the Catalan. If anything, like black's playing the white side. It's funny that you say Tartakover. Well, no, actually, the Koltanowski-Coley system. It's almost like the Koltanowski-Coley system versus the Grunfeld. The Catalan is the Grunfeld, and White's playing the Grunfeld, and Black's playing the white side of the Koltanowski system or Coley system. Right. But anyway, White played Queen C2. I think this move may be okay. Obviously, it's okay. What about pawn takes pawn? Is that like out of hand bad? No. Oh shit. We transpose to that new gambit, the newish gambit, the B6. So you actually transpose to this exchange sack line. Right. No, this has been played a lot, and it's a good exchange sack. Queen takes D4, bishop takes A8, queen takes E5, and bishop F3. This has been relatively new. Okay, you see, since 2017, 2016. But the problem is, somebody realized that White doesn't have to take the exchange. I think they started playing like bishop G5. But there was this funny game. What was it now? There was a funny game. Something to do with bishop takes F6. Was it here? Yeah. So check this out. There's a game Muxudlu versus Luca Moroni, the Italian player. So Muxudlu here didn't know the refutation of bishop b7. It's kind of funny. He's 2671. He's a genius, but he didn't find bishop takes f6, bishop takes f6, knight g5. Threatening mate and taking on b7. So actually, White like wins material. Sometimes being a genius is a handicap, Arsenal. I mean, you experience this every day. Queen c2, bishop b7, knight on bd2. This is a kind of passive move by White. So I would play, I would always prefer to play knight c3 if I can play it. The point is, here it's not so simple because of d takes c. I'm not sure if we can justify that. b3, kind of a standard move, also not that aggressive. This is probably good. And again, like c takes d is definitely a standard move. But knight on bd2 feels a little too passive for White to be threatening. Now knight on bd7. And now White played b3. So White's playing, you got him transposing into kind of a quiet line. Now you played rook c8, and that's good. But also good is c5, which equalizes, it looks like. This setup is quite quiet for White. So rook c8. But maybe you should pull the trigger on c5. I think that's the main idea in the Catalan. You want to equalize by challenging the pawn at d4. And so long as Black is not backwards along the c-file, White doesn't really have any advantage. In fact, like the White queen could end up exposed. His queen ends up exposed to attack. It's going to have to tuck back on b1 or something. Your queen doesn't have a lot of space, but it can hide on e8. Alright, so you played rook c8 now. What could possibly go wrong? I guess nothing, really. I mean, even if White plays pawn takes pawn, you don't have to take back necessarily with the pawn. You could also consider taking back with a piece here. I mean, we don't want to get into like a Muxudlu situation. Let's say like bishop takes e4, bishop b7, e5. So these sort of situations where you get into knight g5, the safer way to play is pawn takes. But I mean, this is going to be an issue like later on. So I feel a little more comfortable with c5. Alright, so rook c8, bishop e2, and now c5. And now white played a very quiet move, e3. So pawn moves. I had a similar game recently, where, as I said, I did rook c1 probably. Maybe it was a simul game. I just went back here. Something along these lines. e3 looks quiet, but also slow and unnecessary. Is he going to take back with the pawn? And this move, I mean, white has no advantage, obviously. He plays e3, and, you know, there was a game here with b5. Very aggressive move. Perfectly playable. This also gives black a square for his queen. A new square for the queen at b6. Tactically justified by this. That's a nice thought. So you played the more questionable h6. Anti-Muxulu. Actually, Muxulu does c knight g5 anyway, so we don't need to play that against him. Yeah, that reminds me of the time that I played Rousis. He actually did like e4, e5, knight h7 in a closed Catalan. I don't know that I've ever seen anyone do that. That was pre-computer, Igor's Rousis, in 1999. It's like those sports cards. You've got to like put like an asterisk next to like Mark McGuire and Manny Sosa for like the pre-PED home runs and like post-PED home runs or whatever. It's like if there were baseball cards for like chess, we could have like Igor's Rousis, Grandmaster, Latvia, and then like pre-computer and post-computer in like with a like asterisk after it, like rating 2640 post-computer. His family disowned him. That's severe. Wow. Yeah, we had an Instagrammer, I am here, recently outed. I haven't heard of him. I haven't heard about him lately. He's laying low. h6, really not the ideal move. This is a nice move, b5. I mean, h6 isn't terrible, but I would say like the Karpov maneuver here is probably the most classic. You do rook c7, and then you swing the queen over to a8. This is probably rock solid. Let's see if we check the lichess opening explorer. Rook c7, is it even on the Wow, there's 5 games with rook c7. 2319, a 2060 named chess master, a 2032. But everybody's like over 2,000 there. That's a high standard. Yeah, I don't love e3. You can play bishop a3, but again, you know, it's maybe a problem actually with the queen position. I really feel like we need to get the queen out of the line of fire here. So I would have gone with probably rook c1 if that works tactically. Oh, now there's a game with rook c7. Astalos Victor. Wow, an old Hungarian game from 1997. See? Queen b1. Queen a8. I don't know there was a master named Astalos. But I don't know if that's the same guy. I mean, there was a historically strong Hungarian player, I believe, named Astalos. I think it means like table master or something. Queen a1, bishop f8. I don't know if that's the same guy. He'll be back. So, anyway, h6, kind of passive, rook c1, rook e8. This is another standard move. You know, in these type of situations where the knight's coming into h4, f5, you know, you're glad to have bishop f8. obviously. And rook e8 is a useful move to make in these kind of structures. But remember that it's oftentimes your queen's only square if you don't have c7 or a8 available. So he plays h6, rook c1, rook e8, rook f d1, queen c7. That's a more like, you know, overt way to play it. So you could have gotten there faster if you had chosen the direct route with rook c7, queen a8. Now, the million-dollar question, do you want to take White? You know, White might regret having the rook on d1, but can White anchor his knight with I don't think Ostolich was Victor, but can you anchor the knight with f4 like Pillsbury? This would allow d takes c, and we don't have access to e4, so we have to go passive here. And then f4. And you got to admit, it looks like White's better. Because we're just kind of bottled up behind that pawn. I mean, I don't love this. I don't like the look of this. So I think it's a good judgment by White, or rather by Black, not to take on e5. He's trading the bishop off. White plays this. I would expect like knight takes knight probably. Knight takes knight, knight takes knight. And it's equal. Although White has to be a little careful about his king side. Takes here, and then takes to the knight. I guess this is fine too. Feels like Uber Driver's playing black or something. King g1, knight takes e5, and now d takes e5. And now this is a huge square. I would think Ahms is playing for a win now. With the space advantage. Is this a mistake? You know, why do we have to do knight takes e5 now? I don't see like Black having to play that move. Would it be better to just take with the pawn on d4? Why not exchange on d4? This is clearly a disaster for White. Like, maybe he's okay, but this is not a good position to have an IQP. If you play pawn takes pawn, he has to take back. White will have to take back with a piece here. And I think like the position is pretty equal. After knight takes e5, it's, I mean, if you're happy with the draw, then I don't see the point in making this exchange on e5. It looks like White, although the bishop is ostensibly blocked. Oh, taking with the rook. Okay, maybe rook is a little better. Threatening this in some cases. But okay, that won't really happen because this is going to happen anyway. It's equal. I mean, this is a totally equal position. It's really, really equal. This has got to be a draw. You know, if this isn't a draw, I'll eat my hat. But this could be like White. You know, I think that Black's expecting him to take with the knight, and then suddenly realize, oh shit, White's taking with the pawn. Now you have a queenside majority, but I think it's more immediate the effect of this, or the effect of the control of d6 here. You know, if he plays 96, it looks like Black's worse. Maybe e4. He could have played 96. Knight d6, bishop d6, pawn d6. This is a nice diagonal. The bishop's strong. He has e4. So Black's going to have a blockade, have fun blockading here. I'm not super comfortable with our position. This, and then e4. Right, no, he's threatening d7. He's threatening d7 right now. So our options are pretty limited. We have to blockade. I mean, f5 deserves consideration, but I'm not sure, it's a good thing. So it looks like white's actually better after this. So I don't know. Nils Ahms missed it. He plays e4 instead, knight b4, and then goes in. And he does this. Well, I guess he's still better. It's really not that much different. Black's still slightly worse. This move. Wow. So he's hoping to induce some weaknesses. I mean, f6 is clearly playable. I don't think the black is definitely lost here. But you took on e4, and now bishop takes g7. And suddenly the black king is wide open. It looks like white is much better. But maybe it's not that big a deal. Bishop f6, and then blockade. Now you're threatening knight d5. What about... Yeah, he tries rook c4, exactly. So, actually, Ahms really went for it here. He has a powerful passed pawn, some potential threats. H3, rook g4, the passed pawn. Black's just hanging on. So now the threat is simple. I don't know where that bishop wants to be. I mean, we could see an exchange sacrifice in certain positions. I mean, I don't see anything direct, though. And now f6 really weakens black's position. Yeah, bishop e7 was interesting. I mean, how big is white's advantage here? Non-existent. It's that big. And Arsenal's bishop e7 was the best move. See, but I mean, again, this is a case where I think you have to really take computer evaluations with a grain of salt. I mean, yeah, white's not better, but that's if you're a computer, you can calculate 19 moves deep. I still think that in a practical game, white is better here. You can say, you can believe what you want, but black's king is less safe, and it requires very accurate defense from black. If he defends very accurately, he's a tiny bit better. If he makes one mistake, he loses. I mean, it's like, which would you rather be? Worse by 0.2 but have practical chances to win, or better by 0.2 but have to defend like very accurately. So chess positions analyzed by the computer with CPL evaluations are not that practical. We have to really take it with a grain of salt. Bishop e5, f6 now, building the wall. Building the wall of bishop surrogates. Prefer to have the active pieces and prefer to have the active pieces and prefer to have the safer king. Certain people are specialists in defense, Now bishop f4, knight f4, rook f4, king h7 cannot be played yet, but you have e5. Now the pawn is isolated, a long way from home. But now we have a heavy piece ending, which does lend itself a little more to a draw than with minor pieces on the board. White's still a tiny bit better, but he can also lose this pawn and possibly go on to lose the game. Yeah, I mean, white definitely shouldn't trade. He should not trade queens here. There's absolutely no winning chances after trading queens, so he tries to avoid the exchange of queens and stay on, keep the pieces on. But objectively, black is... Okay, f5, a little risky. Wow. You're tripled on d6. And so if white tries to attack e5, you take pressure off of d6. You know, a crazy move here for white, which probably doesn't work, is f4. But actually, I mean, this move needs to be looked at. Because, you know, if white wants to win, I mean, opening up the black king, A, and then, like, weakening control of f5. My instinct is that f5 is a risky move for black. But black is under pressure, and he's slightly worse. He's been unable to make the queenside pawn, you know, majority matter. So after f5, it's a hard move to find f4. He also has queen c3. But now rook takes d6. This is the problem. So if I play f4, I can increase the pressure here, try to induce this. But then we have all sorts of possibilities, you know, queen c3 check. Queen f6 maybe. It's not so easy to make progress for white. Probably your best bet is just go for the protected passed pawn. Okay, objectively maybe it's equal. Computer doesn't play f4 though. What about it? It thinks at e4 you're fine. So it's a mistake to play e4. It's an interesting try, but the protected passed pawn with e4 is too much. So he should try to make progress on the queen side. a5 is good. Rook e8. Uh-oh. You really want to keep your pressure on that pawn. On d6. Yeah, this is awkward now. White is definitely better. You were forced into a very passive situation. There's a problem though now. You have counterplay with e3. Possible perpetual checks and whatnot. So at this point it looks like Am's like rushed. He played queen takes b7. But objectively, I don't think this is like really a winning attempt. The problem is going to be e3, isn't it? I mean, isn't he going to have black going to have e3? I guess it's not so simple, is it? There's no time for e3. Wow. So, yeah, but black's a pawn up. Interesting, but now we're threatening e3. And now we're threatening e3. You still didn't play e3. Well, why no e3? Oh, there's like a trick, like check. And we'd have to calculate this king and pawning game, but I think you're better there. You're probably actually better here. Because you'd have the outside passed pawn. Looks like e3 is okay. I mean, you could argue that like black's playing for a win or something. But objectively not really. Wow. So now white has a passer here. He can get back and stop this pawn. But it seems like you're better now. There's no rush on b5 though. So did you make a blunder here? Is black winning after king e6? My impression is that black is nearly winning after king f6. King e6 rather. King e6 is winning. If you play king e6, white doesn't have time, you know. You played this too early. He can get back. And now he gets back in time. I mean, does it matter though? You know, is it yeah, maybe it's You've gotten the waiting moves. He has f3. But I guess there's a question about how far away your outside pawn is. There's also tempi. What about h5? h5, h3, h4, f3, takes, king takes. c4, b4, c3, king e3, c2, king e2, king f4, king c2, king here, king takes. What black's winning? Are you still winning? Is the question. He's just drawing in this line. Wow, even king d4 draws. That was a nice find in time pressure. f3 also draws, but it would have been hard to calculate. But it was a nice job by Alms to hang on there because he was in serious danger. Yeah, interesting game. Alright, we got, what is this, Xerox Mule Skinner if it's not too late. AQL547. Hi, Master. No, I can't play. Trip Chance. Joining Kraken Training Squad. You're welcome. Mule Skinner, if it's not too late, game for analysis. I recognize. Mule Skinner. Hello? Why can't I do a copy and paste here? But I mean, honestly, like, I feel kind of bad for Alms there because, you know, he shouldn't have ever really been losing that ending. But the tendency to overpress is quite strong. When you've been better, safely better most of the game. I've lost so many games where I'm better, you know, and just went too far. It's so tempting. You don't know when to stop yourself. Not easy to judge, you know, how far to press without, you know, going over the line. Well, obviously in blitz it's even more prevalent than like tournament chess. Mule Skinner, e4, d6. Okay. Guys, I'm going to take a short break. I'll be back in a minute. Just 1 minute. Alright, guys. On to the next game. Thanks for all of your support. We're back. We're going to analyze next Goju's game against Xerox. Next stream tomorrow morning. I'm not leaving or going anywhere, but I just want to remind everyone this Saturday, no stream. I've been doing Saturday streams the last couple of weeks. I had to prepare for Sunday's Hungarian Team Championship. So we're next streaming tomorrow morning, and then again the Sunday simul stream as usual. Kraken is offended by your statement. Alright, Goju playing the black pieces. Kraken get angry. Let me turn the engine off. So, what we got here? Oh, the Brooklyn defense. Okay. So e4, knight f6. Yeah, I mean, this is a good opening if you like to make life hard for yourself. I would say, like, after playing this opening, like, a lot, you should probably switch over to something more classical, and you'll find life feels so much easier. The virtue of this opening, of course, is that people aren't particularly, like, respectful of it, A. Number two, they don't necessarily face it often or memorize what lines should be played. There are two approaches for black here. Either closing the center or putting pressure on the center in a more traditional kind of Alekhine defense way. And I really don't, I don't know. I mean, I've done no more than maybe play it in a blitz game or two. So it's interesting, though, Xerox here doesn't play the automatic d4. I guess, well, you really have two options. Like, you're either going to maintain your pawn on e5 or you're going to trade it off. But that doesn't hinge on playing d4 or not. Secondly, if white thinks about it, he could choose a setup where he's not necessarily playing d4. But if you play d4, you have the option to support the center with f4 or trade it off with e takes d6 and just maintain relatively strong pawn at d4. Alright, but anyways, knight f3, notice it's much more rarely played than d4. It blocks the f-pawn's ability to support the center. So that's one thing. But here you've got to answer the question. The call. Answer the call. Benefits playing knight f3. I mean, what's the benefits of knight f3 versus the disadvantages of knight f3? If I play d6 now, what is white going to do? I would be concerned about bishop c4, maybe. It's interesting that d6 is the most common move. I'm not at all surprised. I think it fundamentally makes sense. We're trying to put pressure on the enemy's center, trade it off or destroy. Lure them out and then kill them, basically. In military terms, lure the enemy out and then kill them. It's a trap. Where's Mr. Coffee? It's a trap. It's Queen D8 Scandinavian. One way to look at it. Except it's not. It could be, though. But not until this central thing has been resolved. At the moment, it's not yet a Queen D8 Scandinavian. After d5, I would think like white could just play d4. That's what he does. Only a handful of games here, and very experimental players playing black. Rossi, Drazic, and De Pasquale, all players who play like offbeat stuff. Yeah, I mean, I lean more toward d6 personally. Then if bishop c4, what do you do, for example? I mean, do you now play d5? Do you play e6 and sort of troll white? Oh, c5 is an interesting suggestion from Uber Driver. That actually... Very interesting suggestion. I'm surprised Uber Driver not with the h6 crowd, or maybe g5. As unorthodox and crazy as he is. I like the c5 idea. That pretty much, I think, borders on refuting knight f3. Really, c5, if you think about it, c5 is the reason why people probably shouldn't play knight f3, to be perfectly honest. I think that sells me on d4 for sure then. No, and it looks like d4 is clearly better because it prevents or discourages c5. It's funny that Pierrot has a game here where someone actually allowed this. It's crazy. This is really, really extreme. Very extreme play by black. White is not obligated to play d5 either. Yeah, see, the computer wants to take on c5. And Facundo pushed. So this is actually better. Interesting to know. Anyway, alright, so knight f3, you miss c5. Now he plays d4. Now we get a Caro-Kann, kind of position. If you play c5 here, you're transposing to the Caro-Kann. That's like literally, what do they call that now? What is that variation called again? Something's wrong here. Oh no, we're moved down. We're moved down. No, we're moved down. Baffinette Karls. Well, we're moved down, right? Oh shit, we're moved down. It's the Baffinette Karls system down a tempo. Yeah, it's not good. This is a big tempo. That's a huge tempo. That's a lot. Yeah, black can't really gamble that. So e6 is a tempo down. French. c5 is a tempo down. Baffinette Karls system. c6 is a tempo down. Caro-Kann. Bishop g4 feels right, but I have this weird feeling I'm playing like the white side of the... Why do I feel like I'm playing I don't know what this feels like. It feels like an Albin somehow. Like I'm playing the white side of the Albin, and after c4 I would be concerned about my squares. The Arsenal fan will like the Chigurh nature of this position. I think c4 is interesting. I want to try to tear into these white squares. This is where black is weak. Can we try to exploit black's lack of development or whatever? Now it gets interesting. c4. So there's some games with h3, bishop takes f3. Yeah, b6, that's a good move. So it looks like bishop f5. And now still c4. Just another kind of weird... It's another kind of weird Albin. Yeah, I don't like this position for black. I'm still on the d6, man. I vote for d6. Well, I vote for c5. And if d4, we go for the d6. It just feels like you're going into a tempo down Caro-Kann all the time. Okay, there's still the practical element. So he plays bishop e2. This is a good, this is a good thing. But I think you have to watch for this. In a lot of cases, that exchange can be good for white. Knight out to g5, bishop e2, queen e2. So now e6, and so the first moment where this is at least plausible. It seems kind of, well, too early, I would think, here. And remember, if you give up the bishop, that white square bishop isn't shut down necessarily. White can open up the light squares. Magnus is happy to collect the light square bishop, even in the closed structure. It's not completely closed. But I don't think that bishop e2 is, as good as h3. Let's say h3, what do we do? Take. Queen takes f3, e6. The queen is a little bit misplaced now on f3. I still like c4 the best. I feel like this is the most dynamic for white. Let's see the opening explorer with the lichess. Sorry. Yeah, c4 is the fourth most common move. Bishop e2 number 1, h3, bishop d3, and then c4. He's playing the solid Xerox. Yeah, now you left the building completely. It's too early to play c5, I feel like, since you're like a tempo down, Caro-Kann. Daft. A true Brit. The daft punk. Okay, h5. That's the first move that came to my mind. But I mean, what the heck is black supposed to play? Like, c5, okay, that's the most fundamental, but also risky. c6, we're just, okay, playing the Caro-Kann down a tempo. Passive. And then what other options do we have? This rope-a-dope, sort of like 97. The 3 a.m. defense. Knight d7, which is really just not the greatest square. So none of the moves, are very appealing for black here. I guess there's the Prohashka maneuver, the John Spielman Prohashka. Your pet move is next. Well, h5 looks really strange. Actually, now that you mention it, I mean, you're trying to carve out a blockade or like an outpost for your piece here. Knight e1 is interesting. Rather than knight g5, we could go to e1. And my idea would be something like this. This comes here later, and white tries to bust through. You'll blockade though. You're going to be able to blockade. You're probably going to be able to blockade, but how? You can't go here because you drop a pawn. You can't go here because you allow like bishop g5. I mean, you can, but I'm not sure if it's good or not. Yeah, this is probably... Well, there's also this check on b5, which has to be calculated. I think knight e1 is an interesting move for white. So now knight on bd2, which is kind of a weird move. Like, okay, he wants to recapture with his knight. That's assuming, you're going to even exchange on f3. I mean, you can go back to f5. So now you're knight h6. Well, I mean, you don't have that many options, and this is particularly... Oh, a6. Uber driver a6. Yeah, I mean, in a vacuum, I like it, but it does seem a little slow. I think you're not completely off base. Say a6 may be better than h5. Now he finally plays c4. And then I'm assuming something like queen b3. But the other thing that white needs to think about is like, where is his knight going? I mean, are we playing knight f1? Are we playing knight b3? Are we playing rook e1 at some point? You know, Arsenal fan. It's a Caro-Kann advanced variation now. But he goes to the old school Acerbate style, c5. That's not the move I was thinking of. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, c5, it's obviously playable, but it's clogging the board. I wouldn't personally play c5. At the same time, it's probably not that bad. But I think it's kind of illogical in a way. I mean, you're ahead in development in a space advantage position. You normally would want to open the game. I would want to keep the tension and play to open the game. So play rook e1, basically. On the other hand, if you ever think about playing for f4, f5, you don't necessarily want to move the rook. The other place to put the knight is on b3. But frankly, like white should probably consider that in the first place, like going here. You might want to put the bishop on e3. Now, if you put the bishop on e3, maybe I go knight e7, knight here. I'll play it a different way. That's why he's timing it. If you go knight h6, you get Michael Adams. We looked at the Michael Adams Manassian game a couple weeks ago in the Caro-Kann. It's just a closed position where knights are more useful than bishops. So bishop takes h6 is... It's just really hard for black to coordinate the rook, you know, in his position in general. But I think this is a bit of a strange move. Now, your knight is unmoved. You know, you got to think about b6 immediately. As soon as possible comes to mind. But this looks like an important question. If white plays b4 and you play a5, what's happening? Is this fine for black? I mean, b5. I am so sorry, guys. b5, slice this diagonal, right? If takes, threatening this and this here. I mean, black even has this move, plausibly. So I'm not sold on this. I'm not sold on c5, and I'm not sold on... Well, you know, I'm not sold on it. I don't know, you know. You shouldn't be playing on the queen side in general, but c5 doesn't look right either. So now he plays b4, and now you played bishop f5. This looks insanely slow. But your point is to what? Like preserve that and then play knight f5? That's a very long procedure. I would have expected you to just like go here. White would play h3. You'd probably exchange pieces and just go about your business. Maybe you can try to like bring this knight over here. You have less space. Instead, you played bishop f5, keeping that piece. Oh, God, I hate that button. I'm sorry. Take that freaking button off the screen already. I've already had like rants about this. I hate this fast forward button. Why is that on chess programs? It's not a freaking VCR. Tape, you know, cassette tape player button. Just no need for the fast forward. All right, knight b3. Yeah, this move doesn't seem right. But what else is he supposed to do? Knight b3 here. a4. h4. We're just grabbing our space, and now white plays bishop d3, which is counterintuitive. First off, I would consider h3. I guess he's concerned about g5, but I doubt that's good. You always have knight h2. You know, I don't believe in your attack on the king side, although f6 is possible. I've never been a big fan of g5 and f6 in the black side. You could go. I know the mouse. I gotta learn to use the scroll wheel. I know. I was thinking about that today, Ars. You get into a habit of clicking. I got in this habit of clicking. I don't know what's. Once in a while, you get a mouse like the scroll wheel doesn't work or something. I don't know. Yeah, I need to be more comfortable with my scroll wheel. I'm like dogmatic. Okay, I think what he did is actually reasonable, allowing h3. Maybe we shouldn't play h3, I don't know. You obviously have f6, as crazy as that seems. Maybe not. Alright, scratch that suggestion. I don't think you have f6. f6, knight h4, bishop takes d, queen takes, pawn takes pawn, queen g6 check. I don't know. I mean, this looks ridiculous. No. Alright, you played h3, g3, bishop takes d3, queen takes d3. I mean, he traded off his good bishop, but he has so much space that I don't know what a good bishop is anymore. Knight f5. This is not stable because of g4. I think that white has too much space. Okay, and now... Okay, I know that I forced Guoju to submit a game. Now he plays a crazy move. Relatively normal position. It looks like you played the Alyakin's defense. You don't have enough space. I would consider my options being like g6, king f8, king g7. You can artificially castle by putting your king on g7. I think castling queenside is totally out of the question, given his space edge over there. g5. g5 should have been considered prior, to playing h3. I think that would have been the best. But safer is g6, king f8, king g7. My fear is a slow build up for white. So something like knight e1, f4, but then just preparing g4 very slowly. Basically, eventually white will get everything set up so he can play like g4, f4, f5. And if you try to prevent it by playing g4, he'll just break with f3. Essentially, at least on paper, you can't prevent white from engineering a very, very gradual, like g4, f4, f5. Still, it's not that easy. And black might have f6 at some point. But ultimately, you just don't really have a safe place for your king, especially if you play f6 or g5. So you made a mouse slip. I mean, it happens to the best of us. Mozart. He made a very strange mouse slip with bishop h4. Obviously, black meant to click g5. He meant to click g5, but he accidentally touched his bishop and then accidentally touched g5, rather h4 instead of g5. The only explanation for bishop h4 is he was trying to play g5 and mouse slip bishop e7 to h4. Or possibly you were trying to play g6 and you were accidentally mouse slipping bishop h4. I mean, at least with like knight h4, I guess you're sort of tangibly threatening to play knight g2 or something. Like, I don't know. But bishop h4, even if that move had a purpose, I can't possibly figure it out. Oh, knight f8. Okay. Chess Grinder 69 has followed. Nice to see, Mozart. A merciful end. Right. And the shocking thing is, like, he didn't take it. I mean, white can win a piece two different ways. Taking with a knight, and now knight takes, pawn takes, and black's overwhelming counterplay is too much for me. Or pawn takes, knight takes, and white has other options, including knight takes h4. Well, white chose to give black, yeah, speaking of merciful, b5. He just ignored it. Ignored winning a piece, because that would be too complicated. However, ignoring the bluff allows g5. Which, you know, I mean, it does create a little bit of confusion. Now, obviously black should still be lost, but I would say the situation is a little bit weirder now. If we take the bishop at this point, now g4, he couldn't take on h4 and play bishop g5, right? Because there was, like, you know, bishop g5, knight takes f3 check, and the bishop falls. That wasn't an option. So after b5, g5, king h1 is the Mozart's composition here. That's a cold-blooded move. The bishop's not going anywhere, and so after g4, we're going to take, but our king will be clear of the g file. And black absolutely doesn't have any compensation for this sacrifice. Okay, well, I mean, to be fair, you know, we guilted Guizhou into submitting a game. He didn't really have a good game to submit. So we're not going to criticize him too much for the mouse slip. Okay, g5, rook fb1, g4, and now, shockingly, white doesn't take. I mean, sometimes we have to just take material and, you know, this strikes me as a, number one, like, I'm being fancy. You know, I'm just being kind of lazy. Like, I don't want to bother to calculate. I'm winning on the queen side. I'm not going to bother to calculate. But it's a whole piece, you know. And this is a whole piece. You have to take it. It's like The Godfather. There's nothing like a rook sack. I mean, you could try it. But, I mean, in what world would this attack possibly amount to anything for black? It's hard to even imagine if you gave black, like, a couple moves in a row. I mean, like, just give him, like, 3 moves in a row. I don't know. Here, yeah. If you could play queen takes h4 plus g3 plus g takes f2 check, then, like, okay, maybe we have enough compensation or something like that. It's not even close. Instead, he wants to give his opponent a chance, a sporting chance. It's like the Isle of Dr. Moreau or whatever, when like, the doctor, you know, lets the people, like, you know, get a head start before he starts hunting them or something. Going to give you a sporting chance, old man. Keep your bishop. Okay, bishop g5. You know, sadly, that's our good bishop that we were giving away for nothing there. And now white just continues the program. This is not good. But we have a shot. That probably doesn't work. So takes. Now Mr. Fancy is not going to play knight takes b7. Now we have knight takes d4, but it looks like it allows knight takes b7, and we're basically toast. Knight takes d4. There is an interesting try. Knight takes b4, d4, knight takes b7. This is really nasty. And I was going to suggest this, but now this actually does work, and black has just lost. I mean, you could probably like imagine a world where somehow some miracle would happen, like here, pawn takes pawn, knight check, knight takes, queen takes h8 check, king here. You know, even this position, check, king f8. Obviously a draw, right? Like check here, check here. This is obviously a draw. King f1, check, king here, 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 check. It's mate? Don't tell me it's mate. What mate? There's another move. I'm just kind of joking around, obviously, but I didn't see a mate. Where the heck is there a mate? Do you have a queen h6 check or something? Well, obviously there's a mate on g2, but nobody's going to allow that. Queen d8 mate, because the rook on a8 doesn't exist. No, we have a rook on a8. I just want to point it out that there's a rook on a8. But anyway, this is a fantasy variation. I'm just like... It's surprising that black might actually have a draw here. Probably doesn't, right? This is probably winning. Yeah. Okay. Never mind. It looks like knight d6 is decisive. I was just kind of playing around. All right. So queen c7 was the game, and then takes. It's over. This is too much. Too much space. Too much. Black should be lost. So now you castled, but g5 is not covered. White's completely winning, and he should pick off the g4 pawn, thus defending d4, his pawn center, and picking off g4 and h3, and Mozart said h3 would fall. Your game was submitted too late. No, you're fine. You're next. I don't have that many games. But anyway, this wasn't a really great game. Black had way too much spatial difficulty, but now he plays f3. Why not queen g5 check? I guess Xerox, I get them confused. One's from Sweden, one's from Finland. They're both aspiring to join NATO. Queen g5 check. Okay, f3 is winning too, to be fair. But it was kind of funny. Okay. f3 is winning too. Queen d8. Yeah, it's not good. I don't know what to suggest. I mean, you're just lost. Your king is lost. It's lost. Now, this is a disaster. And then a desperate sacrifice. Is there any hope? Oh, you were very low on time. So the impression I get here at some point is that Xerox is kind of... I know, Arsenal. I'm just kidding around. F takes g4. It feels like at some point Xerox is just trying to win on time, so he sort of stopped playing even the best moves. Is there any hope now? Maybe some sort of sacrifice on g3. This is about the best Black's position has been maybe the whole game. It feels like you might almost have something here. For once, at least, he's not threatening to annihilate us. I have takes and h2 check. Well, we have one nice trick. The only trick is takes, check, and if white plays this, you have h1, queen winning. It's pretty bad though if that's your only trick. But maybe there's something there. You also have king g7 in the h file. So you take on g3. White will never take it. He never accepts any of your sacrifices. But if he does, you play h2 check. And now when he takes it, you try king g7. At least you have some sort of vague bullshit on the h file. But queen d8 looks... Okay, maybe knight h6 isn't that bad. I don't understand what white's doing now. He's pulling the rook out. You're threatening g4, and he's voluntarily retreating his rook back to b2. That's playing for time. He's just making moves nearest the clock or something. I have the feeling white's just making the fastest moves he can find. There's really no reason to withdraw his pieces from the 7th rank. And knight a5. Okay, this knight now comes back to c5. Yeah, just making random moves. White's blowing his whole position now. For no apparent reason. Just to try to flag black. But I mean, this means that you're playing too much time without increment. If this is an increment game, white has totally screwed up his whole position now. You need to take this and bank on the fact that all three of these pawns are Isolani. I'm beginning to wonder if black isn't hanging on somehow. Probably the space is still too much. No, black's better. Wow. So he's actually better. Unbelievable. Yeah, white just totally degraded himself into playing for time. But you didn't do that. You could have done this and you didn't do it. With 24 seconds left. Destroying his pawn center is golden. You decided to play over here. I mean, these pawns are his whole position, essentially. That wedge center. That's his whole advantage. I mean, you're playing the Alyakin's defense, and if you have a chance to undermine his center, I mean, I think that's kind of the goal of the opening, in a way. Rook e1, rook b8, rook b2, and black resigns. You resigned. You resigned just because you were sick of him playing so goddamn fast. A clock punching monkey. High on dopamine. Exactly. Deposition. No, I was thinking of dopamine. Why did you resign? Oh, because you dropped a fork? You lost the exchange? No, it's black's move. He actually doesn't even see it. Wait, rook b8. He didn't have a fork. And now you resigned. So rook b4. Attacking his center. Clock punching monkey. Yeah, that's a good one. 1 second. Oh, 1 second. Well, it looked like 13. On my end, you have 13 here, but maybe you didn't. Maybe you let it down to 1 second when you resigned. But you're actually still okay in the final position. You're better still. But I think the fundamental thing for me, for this game is like you're going to play the Aliekin's defense. I understand there's different ways to play it, but fundamentally, we're trying to induce white to overextend himself and then counterattack his center. So my first question is, when you play this position, d6, or as someone else pointed out, c5, preventing him from being able to support his overextended pawn. Or more importantly, why are we playing d5 rather than like d6, counterattacking the center? Having said that, it's still viable. But even at the end, near the end, I mean, you really should have taken on c5 and be thinking more consciously about, if you destroy his center, I think that white no longer has an advantage. Yul Skinner just submitted a game where he's white. E4. The Kraken. Yeah, the Kraken. Knight c3 versus the Kraken. I thought of a great new screen name. Phil my Kraken. Alright. That's my Kraken's name. I just want to tell everybody. For those of you that didn't know what his name was, this Kraken, his name is Phil. Phil Rizzuto for the money store. This is Phil, my Kraken. Alright, I just wanted to introduce him to all of you. I love laughing at my own jokes. Alright, somebody's got to laugh at them. So, he needed a name anyway. I mean, that's my Kraken, Phil. He's like a good poker player. All good poker players are named Phil. Alright, e4, d6, knight c3, g6, and bishop c4. This is what the global, those Sicilian Grand Prix attack players do against against the Pierts. It's really annoying if you play the Pierts. There's nothing you can do against the Grand Prix attack, really, except just like transpose to the Sicilian or something like that. Every time I play the Monitor or Pierts and someone does like bishop c4, knight c3, I just can't help but thinking like, damn, there's like nothing I can do except for transpose to the Sicilian. Alright, you can play some weird move like e6. Uber Driver would start playing the hippo here. Like Colin McNabb. Colin Anderson McNabb. Cam. So, bishop g7, f4. Now, obviously c5 transposes to the Grand Prix attack. So if black doesn't want to transpose to the Grand Prix attack, what the hell do you do? And you don't want to play the hippo, necessarily. You want to play something more incisive than the hippo. You could play the Kraken-like setup has a good score. But that's not essentially, I don't know. I mean, another thing is, what about like bishop c4 versus f4? Is it maybe more accurate to play f4 first? Why don't we play f4 and knight f3 first? Why are we playing bishop c4 first? Is there a specific reason? I mean, there are other closed setups you could employ, I guess, without playing f4 necessarily. Notably, Nigel Short there, I mean, Mr. Closed Sicilian. naturally capable of playing bishop c4. But no, but in all seriousness, I would think Mule Skinner f4, bishop g7, knight f3, knights before bishops. And then the question is, like, okay, black can play c5 going into the Sicilian, knight f6, keeping it in Peert's territory. So there's maybe a reason behind this. Like, is it like bishop c4? Knight takes e4. So this is equal. The engine says it's equal, but white is like 6-0 here. It's kind of funny. It's not 6-0. 6.5. No, 5.5 out of 6. It's 0.0, but white has 5.5 out of 6. Yeah, the Frankenstein Cracula. That's good. Makes me want like breakfast cereal. Frankenberries. Like, you never hear it. You hear of like, you know, Count Chocula, and I mean, you just never hear it. Frankenberry. No, it was Booberry. Count Chocula, Booberry. What was there? Was another one maybe, but I don't remember the third one. Child of the 80s. Like, really, what is the other monster cereal? So bishop takes f7, king f7, knight e4. Booberry and Frankenberry? That doesn't make sense. There can't be Booberry and Frankenberry. That doesn't make sense. There's two berries. And Count Chocula? That's just not balanced. You're a coconut puff. Uber driver. Oh, so Frankenberries are like red and Booberries are blue. Alright. I guess I'll accept that answer. Rook f8. Till Wipperman versus Thomas Reich. Alrighty, anyway, like, that's the question. And then there's the interesting suggestion of Mozart earlier, who was talking about something about knight a5. So, Mozart, what are you on about now? Like knight c6, bishop c4, knight a5? You want to play like Wackenfuss, Klaus? You can probably meet him at a Swiss cafe or something. Knight a5. You might not, now actually, correction. A lot of people are playing the bishop e2. Because of that, what's his name? Lawrence Trent or whatever. A while back, Lawrence Trent promoted like the Grand Prix attack with bishop e7 or something for black. So, I mean, it's true, like, the average Grand Prix attack player wouldn't know how to play with the bishop on e2. But I've seen an uptick in these guys who are playing like bishop e2 type of Grand Prix attacks, with, well, at least with the black side, as a sort of defense. Like, you're playing in almost like Dutch, Simon Williams Dutch type of thing. It's not bad for white, though, but it's an interesting idea to play knight a5 and c5. So this was played by Robach back in 1991. But he obviously got it from Wackenfuss. And there's a Padavsky game from 1978, so it goes way back. It's provocative and interesting. But I guess at the end of the day, this bishop b5 is another option. But anyway, my question to Mule Skinner is that, simply, do we want to commit the bishop to c4? Okay, bishop g7, and then f4. And now I know that black can play like c6 type of stuff here. I have seen this. And I was tempted to investigate the possibilities. with c6 rather than just transposing to a straight up c5. So look at this. Some sort of Emery-Tate idea. Besides just the standard kind of like b5. By the way, what's the trap here? Oh, that's just brutal, right? Is it d5? Knight takes b5, d5. That's so mean, you know? You're like, oh, I've got you. Knight takes b5. If you take the knight, you get bishop d5, and white's winning. But you do knight takes b5 and then d5, and suddenly, like, you have to lose a piece. That sucks, you know? Oops, that didn't work. But this is interesting, an alternative idea for black to just simply transposing. But I think, like, okay, knight f6 would be our number one move. And now, okay, the d3. Uber driver, bishop takes c3 is usually bad. You know that. d3, disallowing possible fork tricks. So you see now c6 is the second most common move. I think the idea is not necessarily as much b5 as it is to smack white in the center with d5. But at the end of the day, you got to keep asking yourself, okay, if black has to play d5 in two moves, is it all that great? You know, so if c6, we don't play necessarily knight f3 because we get smacked by Pewter Win. I wonder what percentage of Vietnamese are named Win. It has to be like massive. I mean, it's like it blows Smith away. Like 40% of Vietnamese players are like named Win or something. Bishop b3 prophylactic move first. And then your bishop's going to get... He's going to sneak your bishop with something like knight a6, knight c5, but it takes a lot of time, you know. We could even keep the bishop like a3, knight c5, bishop a2, if you insist. So I'm not sure what exactly black's best methodology is. I mean, I'll tell you my conclusion at the end of the day. I think probably playing the Sicilian is, like, ultimately, like, ironically, playing the Sicilian is probably maybe black's best option. But, you know, the Peert's defense players don't necessarily want to transpose to the Sicilian. Okay, castles, knight f3, and now he does c6. And now you play bishop b3, so we get this exact theme. He played e5 immediately. Where did you see that? Oh, there. What? There's a short Mikhail Gurevich game? Oh, c6, e5? You're talking about in the previous position? Like c6? Where is this e5 you're talking about? I'm not sure about the game you're talking about. So the short game... Short castled. Played bishop b3. He didn't play the prophylactic bishop b3. Mikhail Gurevich was a Peert's player. I would think, you know, knight a6 would be a normal move. Pewter Win played a5. But the computer thinks that white has a large advantage here. So it's interesting. c6, you don't have to play bishop b3. Castles is fine. If black plays d5, but maybe d5 is a mistake. Maybe then he should play something more flexible. The b5. b5, bishop b3. Then what? What does black do? a5 looks sort of overrated. A5, A3. Knight on BD7. King H1 or Queen E1. It's a standard type of structure. White's playing the boat. It looks like Noah's Ark. You've got like Noah's Ark, and there's these animals sitting on the ark. These guys are here. This is an elephant, and this is like some kind of rhino. Rhino's over here. This is elephant, rhino, hippopotamus. You guys see the boat, the boat shape basically. They're just riding out the storm basically. This is the ocean over here. I'm also good with like Rorschach tests and stuff like that. Noah's Ark attack. Noah's Ark trap. Alright, anyway. Bishop b3, knight on bd7. And then obviously this is like knight a6, but less overt. Interestingly here, someone played, Black is playing Jerry Hankin. What? Have you ever played Jerry Hankin? Because I played him twice. I almost lost to him once. It was a narrow escape. I got a draw, and then I beat him the second time. But all right. It's the same score as against Waitskin and Edward Gufeld. Knight on bd7. Yeah, you draw against everybody. Castles. A5. A3. Now b5 would basically kind of transpose to what we're looking at. But this is weird. I mean, he goes knight c5 now. But it seems weird to wait until you played a3 to play knight c5. Why is this guy not playing knight c5 right away? I mean, that's the whole point. So check this out. There's a Krivoruchko game when he was young, 2005. Queen e1. Cabezas. Smack you in the head against Krivoruchko. Yeah, it's strange. I mean, why go to the trouble of threatening knight c5 and then not play it, and then play it after you play a3? It's a very strange decision. Obviously you go back and now, like, okay, I guess his knight isn't terrible there, but the fact is you could hit it in the future, and the whole point was to take your bishop. So now it's just sitting out there in the air. But this is a bad sign. Black plays bishop g4. That's like, I don't know what to do. It's like Asterbate playing a6. I suppose it's not as bad as like maybe like the double king pawn openings, let's say, for Black. At least Black doesn't have like pawn on e5, pawn on d6. His pawns aren't as committed, so bishop g4. I think once you play this, though, you're like, okay, I'm going to take. And then you played queen e1. And if you take here, well, that was a great pin. If you take here, what has Black really gained? On the other hand, now this. So this is, straight up. Pieces are outside the pawn chain. You've got too many elephants on the arc, out of doors. The point of the arc is to have the elephants inside the arc where they're protected from the elements. But Black has too many of his animals. It's like arc versus arc. You only have one animal on the outside, on the, what do you call it, the deck. Your arc features like only one animal on the deck of the arc. Whereas Black has three animals about to be like thrown overboard from the deck of the arc. essentially, an arc versus arc. The pieces, the animals belong inside the arc, not outside the arc. So this 96 looks particularly suspicious. If he does get the exchange and swing it in here, I mean, even in that case, you could probably get rid of it with c3. Check. Forcing you to play a useful move. However, now bishop takes f3. Outside the box suggestion, there's always the possibility of this move. Because I like extra f-pawns. I'm really big on extra f-pawns. If we have an extra f-pawn to play f5, more f-pawns the better, An extra half-open file. Now, the traditional way of playing the Grand Prix attack is to attack down the f-file. I'm just simply stating the obvious here that this looks kind of juicy, Black has some pieces on the dark squares, but he's also in danger of, potentially getting pinned. The classic knight h5. It's all fine and good till someone loses an animal off the side of the arc. In this case, Arsenal, it's falling right off the side of the arc. Like your cruise company is going to be contacted by our insurance agent, and I want to know why that animal fell off the side of your arc. I mean, okay, I'm going to play f5 at some point. You better make sure you got enough grip on the dark squares. True enough, you might be able to put your king on h8 and hold it together. No, I'm simply saying g takes f, it deserves consideration. And I'm not saying it's necessarily good. Rook takes, okay, standard move, knight d4. This is very obvious. Now, what is our plan here? Queen f2 walks into knight g4. This is a little awkward. So now black has clear thematic dark square counterplay, but it just doesn't really bite, At the end of the day, he's got to get his king off of this diagonal, because this diagonal is just seriously, there's no way he's going to be able to counter us on the light squares. So the best thing to do is just get the king off the diagonal at some point. And then black plays the horrible h5. Ooh. Here I am suggesting that black should be seriously thinking about playing king h8, and he literally plays h5. Not sure king h8 is safe, ultimately, I mean, to be fair, he was probably concerned about g4. Knight e2 may have been the way to prevent the knight d4 counterplay, Shouldn't be out there on the outside of the arc anyway. He's freezing in the rain and snow on c3. He's lucky, as Arsenal pointed out, that pawn storm didn't launch. The knight or elephant or whatever it is on c3. The knights are elephants, right? The rooks are elephants in Indian chess. So this h5 is weakening the white squares, trying to play for cheapos, or preventing g4. You make the call. I know, but I mean, my experience with this type of situation is he's burning his bridges on the white squares. So f5 is going to hit with even more effect now. Ultimately, when this lands, g6 would be that much weaker. So if you get this in and you take on g6, it's well, first of all, you can't ignore f takes g anymore because there's no h-pawn protecting g6. You can't ignore this. It's going to get stronger. Yeah, obviously, I mean, everybody in the world saw the threat of knight g4. It was the most obvious move ever. Now he plays d5. Now we're getting like creative, blotting out this diagonal. But Astrobate often plays d5 when it's not fully defended. You know, I'm not that enthused about like just grabbing that pawn necessarily. I like your f5 attack. h5 doesn't really prevent g4. It invites it. Right. It's a temporary. Well, it temporarily prevents. Right. It's one of those moves you're not supposed to move stuff on your weaker side, because ultimately it's a stopgap measure that may make things worse in the long run. And that's what Mozart's saying. Like, you're not really preventing it, you're just slowing it down, and then when it happens, it's going to be even worse. And that's essentially f5. Oh, he wants to do knight f5 and trap your queen. Wow, that's tricky. He's trying to do tricks based on trapping the queen here. I hadn't even considered it. But I think intuitively I don't want to play pawn takes pawn anyway. I want to play this. Number one rule of Grand Prix attack is, you know, your f4 pawn is always blocking that bishop anyway. So you want this diagonal to be open in a Dutch, or I mean this is the hinge anyway. We played the Grand Prix attack. We're basically trying to hinge the whole attack on f7. So you're thematically playing for f5 anyway. It's essentially a Dutch, right? You play f5. This is not scary, right? I guess he won't be putting his knight on f5. He won't be putting his knight on f5 now for sure. You know, you have like e5. It looks like black is in a world of danger here. I don't really know what to suggest for black at that point. If you play f5, what is he going to do? You prevent g5. He's gonna get racked here. This looks really, really bad. I don't think that black has a viable position. Plus 1.0. Knight h7 hangs on. That's a move that's hard to play. You know, it's like, wow. Look at that diagonal. Taking his knight off of f6 and bringing it back to h7. Needless to say, h5 was a bad idea. Don't touch the pawns in front of your king if the opponent is attacking over there. Now, objectively, what should black do? I don't know. I mean, this has to be considered, right? Like the e6 type of thing. But then, you know, there are a lot of factors in this position. I think e6 looks reasonable. Better than d5, maybe. Well, better than h5 for sure. Okay, you played h3, he plays d5. You played g4. I think this is riskier. It might be good as well, but to me, it looks riskier than playing f5. Maybe g4 stronger. And actually, Mozart was making the point earlier that h5 doesn't really prevent g4, it makes it stronger. You're going to have to be sure, though. Your king is on h1. g4 opens up your king a little bit. But true, it doesn't look like black has any way to really take advantage. And particularly like the white squares. What are you weakening when you play g4? You're weakening f3 and h3, the white squares, the color that he can't really attack. So both f5 and g4 are good. I think he should try to hang on here and not take. Opening the h file looks suicidal. This will only like result in black getting attacked down the h file. So he decides to play rook there, but I mean, is it just about running away or something? Like, it looks illogical to weaken f7. Is it too late to play e6? I mean, there is no good move, really, for black. And now you played the super solid rook b1. And that's a normal looking move. I mean, you want to free the bishop. And then that move. Well, I mean, e5 is self-immolation, I would say. He wanted to play actively. Besides, like, possibly losing material, that's like the final straw. A lot of players, especially young players, are like this. I think that they're overconfident and they only have one mode of play, and it's like aggression no matter what, even if they're clearly worse. This move is reckless. It's extremely weakening. Now there's just no way to blunt the diagonal. You're opening the F file. This looks like suicide. So F takes e5. And I mean, obviously rook takes f6. So rook e5, rook takes f6. There's no, I mean, knight takes c2, but what does that do? You know, you could take here. You're going to get mated on the dark squares. So it's not an option. He plays e5, takes, and knight d7. And at this point, you know, you're like, oh my god. You're starting to consider sacking your rook on f7. I mean, so the point is he can come back and capture with the knight on e5. It's a crafty way of trying to stay active and defend the f7. But I don't know about h5 here. d5 has been hanging for a while, and this is getting a lot more tempting now because of opening this up. And we got to consider every possibility in this position. Feeding him this pawn probably doesn't work. Takes. You think f5 is even stronger? Yeah, I mean, it was my first reaction, but then I changed my mind to f takes e. Without the engine running on my own, I like analyzing that way better. I mean, you were threatening the classic sort of Dvoretsky, like g5, f6 type of thing, where you kill his bishop. At least he could go back to f8, though. It's a tough call, and I think it's also, to be frank, like Mozart, I mean, in my perspective, oftentimes playing the King's Indian, because I don't play the Dutch close Sicilian that much, but King's Indian with similar pawn breaks, I've always found, like, playing the black side of, say, the King's Indian or King's Indian type positions, the most difficult decision is oftentimes exactly that. Like, do you push or do you take? Because they lead to different kind of positions. If you're playing f5, f4, you're going for this spatial attack, and if you're taking on e4, or in this case e5, you're playing a more open type of tactical game. Yeah, f5 is far more like strategic. Plus you're like kind of killing him. It's almost like a sealer sweeper type of idea. You just push past and kill him. He's like killed, you know, he's smashed behind his pawn. His pieces are shut down. So, I mean, to be frank, I think like both moves are strong. But obviously, it's possible that Skinner underestimated, you know, knight d7, which doesn't look that easy to, you know, to crush. Pawn takes h5 looks strong, first of all. But I guess there's a development element here. After knight takes e5, this square is covered pretty heavily. This also guards g6. I mean, it feels like I wish I had like maybe one more move of development. But I mean, this looks sufficient, you know, probably. There are moves though. Maybe knight f5. You know, bishop takes d8, knight takes h4. Black can stay alive in some kind of situation. If you could trade the queens, he could probably stay alive. So Mule Skinner instead, after knight e7, just plays bishop f4. Now this move I hadn't really seriously considered. It is your better bishop, your good bishop. You have a sensitivity on the dark squares. You have a sensitivity to darkness. And you don't know. I mean, black can exchange on either. You know, he can capture either with the bishop or the knight, possibly. I don't really want to lose my dark square bishop. At the same time, like, I want to develop. Maybe you should just consider like bishop e3. Putting black in a rather uncomfortable pin. Again, after knight takes e5, I guess there may be some sort of discovery somewhere. Like knight f5, I don't know. Does he have that right away? Knight f5, I mean, that looks kind of insane. Theoretically plausible, right? But it just feels like bishop f4, I don't know, there's got to be something like stronger here. I want to open up his position, but I want to develop at the same time. I want to find a combination, but I want to open up his kingside with the pawn exchange. Knight takes e5, pawn takes g6, knight takes g6, queen h5, queen g3. I don't know. Queen g3? Okay, there's no substitute for calculation. Maybe queen g4. But now our rook is going to be possibly unprotected in some moment. gh5, knight e5, queen g3. So gh5, knight e5, queen g3. This is a nice idea. Now there's no surprises, so to speak. We're just gonna kind of slowly finish him off if we just simply complete our development. Or, I mean, right now we're just trying to eventually take on d5 and annihilate him by crushing his d5 pawn. If we just had another move of development or two. That's what should happen here. Bishop f4, knight e5, and now g takes h5. So there's this knight f5 type of crap now. No, it doesn't work yet. Okay. Knight f3 crap. And so actually what happened was something quite similar. He played knight f3, and that's now the square, g3. So black can try some sort of desperate, like g5 maybe. But it's just hanging. I mean, you can take it. So many possibilities. This. Fundamentally, black should be lost strategically. Yeah, the rook is finally coming in. The other rook. And then it's overwhelming. But I think structurally black was in trouble. And being down a bishop hasn't mattered, but it should matter, because we should crash through on that diagonal. Rook e6 now. A creative defense, trying to shore up his light squares. So now we have to seriously think about just material gain. You know, at this point, rook takes f3, knight takes f3, queen takes f3. There's that. It looks like everything's in order here. Everything's covered. Computer loves this. You know, we're up 2 pieces for the rook. Pawn takes, knight takes. This is like Stockfish +4. It loves 2 pieces for the rook. Well, I mean, this is even... Well, actually, the rook's hanging. Yeah, this is just over. But you want to take on d5? Uh-huh. You could, yeah, with the rook on e6, you can actually just do that. Yeah, so rook e6 is really actually kind of funky. This probably isn't isn't even working. I mean, you just take here. There doesn't seem to be anything there. Okay, he recaptures, and now you can take with the bishop, double attacking this diagonal and the knight on f3. It doesn't look like... Oh, maybe there's a knight f5 thing. Hold on. But there's nothing there. There's nothing there. We could sack our queen at this point. I mean, by the way. Like, I kind of like white's position here. I don't know for sure, but it's definitely interesting. We could start thinking about sacking the queen. Yeah, so rook e6 doesn't really help. He just doesn't have a good move. And now you played h6. This seems counterintuitive to me. The whole goal has been to like open up the white squares. But if you're gonna take the material with like rook takes f3, I can understand h6 then. We can't play this now because like rook takes is okay, I guess. So h6 fine. Yeah, now take the material. But ultimately, you know, you had this capture on d5 as well. Black doesn't have enough. And then this is over. This is over. This is a diagonal. He couldn't find better. Eventually, it took till move 26, but he finally let you open up the diagonal for that bishop. And it's like brutal now. This is like plus 8 or something. Sorry, plus 9. Plus 9.5. Good approximation. Neil Skinner is not going to screw this up. Those are some nice bishops you got there. Such a pity there's no direct finishing blow. This is sort of counterintuitive. Going over there to win a whole rook. No, he's got queen f6. Take rook up, we'll take it. Damn, he's still defending f7. Oof. Oh no. You could have played e5, of course. There it is. Morales' favorite move. And resigns. No, okay, it was a good attacking game. How's the graph for this one? Let's see if Neil Skinner missed anything major. It looked like okay, pretty smooth. A little hesitant in spots where you had to calculate quite a bit, but overall good game. I find playing the black side of the Pirates against these things annoying. So, and this guy did as well. Yeah. So f4. Incidentally, f4 is the number one move here. You face the Kraken with a6. The best move is c5, see? That's the problem. You're sitting there, you're playing the Pirates, and you're like, I should have been playing the Sicilian all my life. Why am I playing the Pirates defense? Yeah, Ashley's mistake. Computer, man. It's tempting, man. You get sucked into the void of engine analysis. But as I said, I mean, I try to be fair about it. I mean, I'm fully aware that the real problem with the engine analysis isn't that we're like losing our minds and we're not thinking for ourselves, but even if we do use the engine, you know, give me the engine evaluation, and it's like based on 19 moves calculation. I mean, what good does that do me as a human being? Like, the whole system of evaluating positions based on cent upon loss, I mean, for a computer calculating 19 moves deep on average, it doesn't really work for a human, you know? Gives you a good general ballpark figure, but not enough. And this is misleading, you know? There's a lot of positions where it's like +7, but Only if you play perfect moves. You know, what good is that? All right, let's see. So a nice, solid effort by Muleskinner. Black did equalize. According to the Stockfish CPL evaluation, Black equalized here at move with the 96 thing. It's ironic because I thought it was all really weird. You know, the whole like putting the knight on e6 thing. So, to Mozart's, you know, theme, there's some possibility of playing it where you're essentially preempting maybe knight d4. This looks very strange to me. You know, the knight in front, essentially in the way of the pawn, blocking the retreat path of the bishop. The bishop's not pinning anything either. You know, that's a very strange situation. I thought that Black played very oddly. I mean, if he eliminated that bishop in the first place, I mean, seriously, here, we actually did something wrong. So there's a game where someone played a4, but why not a3? If you're going to play this, probably play a3. a4 is more loosening. But maybe Nigel Schwartz's right, and it's better to not do anything, just castle. If a5, what do we do? a3 or a4? It's the same guy. a4. a4 or a3. If castles, that's what Short played, right? But Mikhail Gurevich did like d5 or whatever. He tried to be too direct. But my point is, in the game, like, Black should have been consistent and played. He didn't play knight c5. I mean, why doesn't he play knight c5 here? At least he takes out the bishop. And you've got some attack, and it's like a standard sort of Grand Prix attack thing. Let's say, what do we do? Actually, is he threatening to pinch you with a5? He could do this and then play a5, right? I mean, that completely makes sense. So, Cabezas versus Krivoruchko. Krivoruchko couldn't be Cabezas. Yeah, rather than knight takes b3, Hebden Spielman, by the way, 1980-01, probably a good game to look at. Those guys know a little bit about chess. a5, immediately, a la Krivoruchko. So now there's this weird move e5 suggested by the engine, which is kind of anti-positional. Maybe that's what Arsenal fan was talking about. Now we're changing plans from the standard kind of Grand Prix attack. You know, not easy to do without the engine in front of you telling you to play e5. Not the most natural move. Cabezas played d4, which is also not standard. Wow, look what Krivoruchko did here. This is a pretty neat idea. He played knight on c takes e4, knight takes e4, knight takes e4, and then he's gonna like trap the bishop. So white facing d5 and a4. If queen takes e4, d5, and then wherever you go, Arsenal fan, we're going to get you. We're going to get you with a4. And now you're not going to have a white square bishop. So Cabezas, he banged his head on the wall with bishop takes f7 check. Rook takes f7, queen takes e4. And then Krivoruchko said, well, where's your white square bishop, bro? And Cabezas held a draw against this young guy who would go on to I believe became world junior champion. I'm not sure. Well, anyway, thank you guys for sharing your games with me today. It is time for me to go. I will be back tomorrow morning with some rapid blitz challenges. And then on Sunday, I know no stream on Saturday. On Sunday, we'll have our normal Sunday simul. No stream on Saturday due to prep for the Hungarian Team Championship. On Sunday for me, this week I have a game. So I'll keep you posted every week about whether or not we're going to meet on Saturday for SladgieCon. So on behalf of Cabezas and everyone else, don't bang your heads too hard on the wall. And I'll see you tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.